Recording in
Amherst Media
progress.
is connected. I just want to confirm that they're online with us. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Are they online?
They're connected. I'm just confirming that we're good to go. Okay, thank you for your patience. We're ready.
Thank you. Good evening. It's September 23rd, 2024. This is a meeting of the Town Council. We will call the meeting to order. We'll start with a primer on the master plan, recess the meeting, and go on to the annual public forum on the master plan, and then reconvene our regular meeting and continue with our business. The open meeting law allows us to continue holding meetings remotely without a quorum of the council physically present at a meeting location, while providing the public with adequate alternative access to the meeting. This meeting is accessible in real time, by Zoom, by phone, and is a live broadcast on Amherst Media Channel 9. There are, in fact, at this time, 6 counselors in the town room. Given that we have a quorum of the council present on September 23rd, I'm calling the meeting to order at 5:40. And I'll call on each counselor by the name they have indicated they would like to be addressed. At that time, please unmute and make sure that we hear you and we can hear you and you can hear us. Pat DeAngelis.
Present.
Anna Devlin Gothier.
Present.
Councillor Ette will be joining us later. Lynn Griesmer is present. Councillor Haneke, I assume, will join us later. Bob Hagner.
Present.
Councillor Lord.
Present.
Pam Rooney.
Here.
Councillor Ryan is absent. Kathy Sheng.
I'm here.
Andy Steinberg.
Present.
Jennifer Taub.
Here.
And Councillor Walker will see that she joins us later. There is no chat room for this meeting. If you have technical issues, please make sure Athena and I know, and we'll be monitoring for that. Let me explain. There will be a public comment period during the public forum and one general public comment period for any other items during the regular meeting. With that, let me introduce Chris Brestrup and state the following. Each year is required by Charter Section 2.13. We hold a public forum on the master plan. Starting in 2019, we have provided a separate session prior to the public forum called the primer on the master plan, provided by Chris Brestrup. It allows us to refresh our knowledge of the master plan and updates regarding actions related to the master plan. The plan was developed through a comprehensive process involving over 1,000 Amherst residents. It was formally adopted by the Planning Board in 2010 and by the Town Council on November 9th, 2020. At the conclusion of the primer, we will then recess the regular meeting of the council and move to the public forum. During that time, we encourage the public to ask and engage in dialogue with us about the master plan. Chris, please go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Griesmer. Good evening. My name is Christine Brestrup, and I'm the Planning Director for the Town of Amherst. I'm here to give you a short presentation about the master plan, and then during the public forum to hear comments and concerns from the public about the master plan. First, I'd like to make a few general comments. One definition of a master plan states that a master plan is a dynamic, long-term planning document that provides a conceptual framework to guide future growth and development. A master plan is not the same as zoning. It doesn't deal with streetscape and tell us how wide the sidewalk should be, and it doesn't say where we should plant trees. It doesn't tell us what style of architecture we should have in our town or how tall the building should be. And it doesn't talk about how many parking spaces that we need. As you will see, it's much more general than that. To accompany our master plan and to support its goals and objectives, we have a series of other plans that map out details for us, including our zoning bylaw. Since the master plan was completed in 2010, we have made many other plans, which can be incorporated by reference into the master plan. And to list a few, they are the Sewer Extension Master Plan, the Housing Production Plan, the Housing Market Study, Transportation Plan, Open Space and Recreation Plan, Bicycle and Pedestrian Network Plan, Community Field Master Plan, Climate Action, Adaptation, and Resiliency Plan, and the Amherst Historic Preservation Plan of 2024, which was just voted by the Planning Board to incorporate into the master plan by reference. That was just completed. It's an update of a previous plan. We have also made many changes to our zoning bylaw since the adoption of the master plan, including 7 zoning amendments in 2021 alone. We have recently adopted zoning amendments to make it easier to build an accessory dwelling unit on your residential property, although the state seems to have preempted that and has gone ahead with its own change to the law with regard to ADUs. We've also made zoning amendments that make it easier to open a restaurant. We've adopted a new set of flood maps and a zoning bylaw to accompany them. We're currently working on a solar bylaw that will become part of the zoning bylaw. It will regulate how large-scale solar installations are permitted. And the Planning Board has just sent a new zoning amendment to Town Council to rezone the area along University Drive between Amity Street and Route 9 to allow more housing in the form of mixed-use buildings to be developed there. The master plan that we will talk about tonight was created over a period of 12 years, from 1998 to 2010. Since we had previously not had a master plan, it took a long time to develop the one we have. The town should start the process for a new master plan sometime in 2025, appropriating money to begin the process with the goal of having an updated master plan in place by 2030. This time, I hope it won't take 12 years to adopt the master plan, since much of the groundwork has already been done. Meanwhile, the town should work on implementing the master plan that we have, including continuing to create new plans to address issues that are important to us, including changes to the zoning bylaw. So let's start looking at our master plan. So this is a presentation. I've given this, I think this is the 5th time I've given it.
so.
So
Yes,
hope you, I'm going to test you all afterwards so you can
yes.
answer my questions. Let's see, is this on? Athena, I pushed the button, the right button, right? What's happening? Oh,
Okay.
thank you. Okay, so we already went over the definition of a master plan. Anyway, it's the community's general long-term blueprint for its future. It's a dynamic document and it's the beginning, not the end of a process. Okay. What does the law say about a master plan? It's required by Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81D. Our master plan was adopted by the Planning Board in February of 2010, and then adopted by Town Council in November of 2020. Amherst's Home Rule Charter requires the adoption of a new master plan by Town Council every 20 years. So 2030 is our target date for a new master plan. We should begin to plan for a new master plan in 2025. Next slide, please. So this master plan was the first in Amherst for nearly 40 years, and it was based on extensive public input. You probably recognize the room that we were in here in this picture over to the right. It's the same room we were in recently to talk about downtown design guidelines, the high school cafeteria. It's a great place to gather. In addition to public input, the master plan was also based on research on the community's existing conditions and anticipated trends for the future. So this master plan represents Amherst's best effort to balance competing interests of a diverse population. Next slide, please. The beginnings of the master plan were in 1971 and lasted until 2006. In 1971, the Select Committee on Goals, which is affectionately called SCOG, was established, and they made a report about what we would like to see in Amherst. One of the things they concluded was that there should be a plan based on a map showing areas that we would like to develop and areas that we would like to preserve. So the map over here on the right with the circles shows the village centers and the downtown. Downtown is the rectangular shape in the middle, and the village centers are those kind of wheel-like images that surround the downtown. You have two village centers in North Amherst, the North Amherst intersection that's at the intersection of all those roads, North Pleasant and Meadow, et cetera. And then the little Cushman Village Center off to the right. Moving down to the south, you have the Gatehouse Road Village Center over to the east, which is really, it hasn't developed as well as we would have hoped. There is housing there and there are some businesses there, and I understand there will be more businesses there in the future. Then we have two village centers kind of in the lower third. That's Pomeroy Lane, where we recently built a nice roundabout, and the village center at the South Amherst Common, which is where the South Congregational Church and the Munson Library are. And then we have the village center to the far south, which is Atkins Corner Village Center, which includes Applewood, and it also includes Hampshire College. I almost said Hampshire Village, Hampshire College. I think it also includes Hampshire Village, doesn't it? Yes, it does. So after the SCOG committee finished its work, then it took about 20 years or a little more than 20 years, and Amherst held a visioning process. And I think they were talking mostly about visions for the downtown, but that was important. So we have a document called Amherst Visions, which was prepared by Walt Kudnahowski and his company up in Conway. And it does have some interesting things to say about the downtown. Then the Comprehensive Planning Committee was established, and they met regularly over a period of 6 years to work on how to proceed with planning Amherst together. So this was planning to plan, and that's what we do. There was a lot of participation from Hampshire College and Amherst College and UMass. In fact, the drawing on the far right, the little purple drawing, is a document that was produced by a class at UMass, a planning class at UMass, trying to get a handle on what parts of town should be more heavily developed and what parts of town should be more preserved. So $20,000 was appropriated in 2004 to hire a consultant to establish a scope of work and a cost estimate for the work of planning Amherst together. Many community members were involved, including Bruce Coldham, who is now a planning board member, John Kuhn, who recently retired from Kuhn-Riddle, Cheryl Zoll, who used to head the Amherst Survival Center, Alyssa Brewer was a select board member and also a council member, Eric Nakajima and Aaron Hayden, Jim Wald, and many others. In 2005, town meeting voted $65,000 for the master plan. Next slide, please. And then in 2006, we really launched the project in earnest. So the consultant was chosen, and we had engagement and support from the Comprehensive Planning Committee. Town meeting voted another 135,000, so we had 200,000 altogether, and the consultant started gathering data. And a lot of this data is on the town website if you're interested, under the topic of master plan. In 2007, Planning Amherst Together held public idea gatherings and group workshops, and a community survey was sent out, I think, to 650 randomly chosen households. And the first draft of the master plan was created. Then in 2008 through 2010, the master plan subcommittee of the planning board edited the draft. It was a group of about 4 or 5 members of the planning board who worked with former planning director Jonathan Tucker to edit the master plan. And then in 2010, in January of that year, we held a final public forum on the draft master plan, and the next month, the planning board voted to adopt the master plan. Many years later, in 2020, in November of 2020, after Town Council was established. Town Council also voted to adopt the master plan. Next slide, please. So the master plan contains chapters on the following topics, and these are required by the Mass General Law: goals and policies, land use, which is my favorite section, demographics and housing, economic development, natural and cultural resources, open space and recreation, services and facilities, transportation and circulation, and implementation. Next slide, please. So how's the
I
master?
want to
plan-
just pause for a moment. Counselor Haneke has joined us. Can you hear us, Manager?
Present.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
It begins with a statement of key directions for the community. And some of them are: maintain Amherst's existing community character, provide housing that meets the needs of all residents while minimizing impacts on the environment, diversify and expand the economic base, and promote an ethic of sustainable environmental energy practices in all town activities. Next slide, please. In terms of land use, the master plan says that we should preferentially direct future development to existing built-up areas, preserve key undeveloped lands, protect key farmland and farming in Amherst, guide new housing growth while minimizing impact on open space and small-town rural character, and honor the historic and cultural character and beauty of the neighborhoods. Next slide, please. In terms of demographics and housing, it says we should encourage a greater mix of housing types, sizes, and prices, serving a wider range of income levels. We should preserve and expand the number of affordable and moderately priced rental units and housing stock. We should encourage the production of housing in an environmentally sound manner, and we should improve housing and services for people who are homeless. Next slide, please. In terms of natural and cultural resources, the objectives include promoting preservation, appreciation, and sustainable use of our historic and cultural resources, and applying principles of environmental sustainability town-wide. So we have some images here. On the left-hand side, we have an image of the Holyoke Range. In the middle, of course, we have the iconic Emily Dickinson Museum. And on the right-hand side, we have the Kearns Center at Hampshire College, which is a living building challenge building, which means that it's pretty much sustainable all by itself. It doesn't need connection with the grid or anything like that. And it's also built of materials that were sustainably sourced. Next slide, please. In terms of transportation and circulation, the objectives include actively promoting alternative modes of transportation. And we have done that with the Valley Bike system, which is very innovative. Providing adequate public parking to support existing and desired new development in the downtown and elsewhere. And I guess that's something that still needs some work. Pursue funding strategies for achieving transportation goals. Next slide, please. And in terms of implementation, provide sufficient resources to implement the master plan, involve a wide variety of stakeholders in implementation, and require concurrence with the master plan. Requiring concurrence with the master plan is reflected in parts of our zoning bylaw, where we have criteria for whether to approve a planning board site plan review or a special permit. And it requires that there's a statement that whatever is being proposed concurs with the master plan. Next slide, please. So I'm going to show you a few things about what we've accomplished since adopting the master plan and how we have implemented some of the objectives and strategies. Next slide, please. And I'm focusing on housing here, particularly affordable housing. So a number of years ago, I think it was around in the early 2000s, we worked with HAP Housing, which is now Wayfinders. They have a new name. And the town and HAP worked together to create this Olympia Oaks housing development, which is really beautiful. If you haven't driven through it, it's definitely worth driving through. It's off East Pleasant Street on Olympia Drive. And it's really a lovely place. It's really well maintained, and it's rental housing for low income families, and all of the units are affordable. Then we have the Main Street housing on Main Street, which you probably pass every time you go up into town. And that is 11 units that were developed in conjunction with Amherst Housing Authority. And it's also very well maintained and really a beautiful asset to the downtown and Amherst. More recently, Valley CDC proposed and had approved development on, we call it Ball Lane, but it's really not. It's really the Pulpit Hill Road and the intersection with Montague Road or Route 63. And there are 30 units there, 15 buildings with 30 units in them of affordable home ownership. And so this is a new idea that the state has put forward to support home ownership for people who haven't been able to own homes in the past. And we're hoping that this project is built and will be inhabited very soon. It was approved by the Zoning Board of Appeals, I believe it was last year. Next slide, please. Then the other ways we get affordable housing are preservation of existing units. At Rolling Green was about to go off the affordable housing inventory, and Beacon Communities and the town stepped in. The town contributed over $1 million to help Beacon Communities to retain the 40 units of affordable housing that's available at Rolling Green. We also have developer-driven affordable housing. So again, Beacon Communities teamed up with Coles, WD Coles, and built North Square, which has 130 units altogether, 26 of which are affordable. And they are affordable to very low income, 30%, and moderately low income or 50% of area median income. So that's really a boon to the town. We have 2 developments of Habitat for Humanity housing, one on North Pleasant Street and one on East Pleasant Street, each of which are duplexes that the people who inhabit them now and are now the owners helped to build. And so that's a really great thing that came to pass. Valley CDC recently completed a development at 132 Northampton Road, which currently houses 28 low-income people, all different income levels, 30%, 50%, and 80% of area median income. And it also includes some people from the mental health community. I have already talked about Ball Lane, and now we're currently working on with Wayfinders again. Wayfinders again is the same group that we worked with on Olympia Drive. So Wayfinders is back in town working on a project on Belchertown Road and at the East Street School to provide 78 units of affordable of housing. I think all but 10 of them are affordable. So that's another really great project that's going through the Zoning Board of Appeals right now. In terms of inclusionary zoning, we have a pretty robust inclusionary zoning bylaw in our zoning bylaw that requires developments with 10 units or more to provide 12% of their units as affordable. So Presidential Apartments recently added 54 units to their development, and they were required to have 6 affordable units. University Drive, 70 University Drive has 4 affordable units. Aspen Heights has 11. University Drive South has 5, I believe. 462 Main Street, which is just down the road here, was developed by John Robleski, and that has 23 units of new housing, with 3 of them affordable. And recently we had a developer take advantage of the payment in lieu of providing on-site affordable units. So he's given the town, or will give the town, I shouldn't say give, he's going to pay the town in lieu of providing affordable units on site over $1 million. And that's a project at 45 and 55 South Pleasant Street. So the town's role in all of this is multifaceted. We have our zoning bylaw, which, as I said, has a pretty robust inclusionary zoning facet. We act as a facilitator with the developer and the state and consultants to help developers to develop projects that can provide affordable housing. The town provides funding in the form of Community Preservation Act committee monies, and we also have a tax incentive. The only developers who have taken advantage of the tax incentive so far are Beacon Communities, but I think that other developers know about it. And then we have a role in permitting. When these projects come through, we assist the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, as well as the applicant, to kind of facilitate the permitting process. And the town also provides land. So in the case of Belchertown Road and East Street School, the town purchased the Belchertown Road site. I think it was $750,000. And the town already owned the East Street School site and is providing both sites. I think there's going to be a 99-year lease on both sites so that these units can be built and can be managed and go forward. Next slide, please. Here are some images of some of the recently completed projects that include affordable housing. North Square at the Mill District, which you're probably all familiar with as a result of there being provisions is there and a general store is there. And the development is really quite lovely. It has a nice dog park and a nice playground. So it's a place to just go and spend some time on a Saturday. One University Drive was recently completed, and that, as I said, has 5 affordable units. It's a mixed-use building, and it has iPhysicians of Northampton in it. Aspen Heights is mostly students, I believe, but there are 11 affordable units there. And East Gables is the 28 units on Northampton Road. Next slide, please. The Amherst Municipal Housing Trust also has a role. They're part of local government and they get their powers from the state and local regulations. They prioritize housing. They providing community engagement and advocacy. You'll probably remember John Hornick, who was very instrumental in having the housing trust set up. And then he was he really was the primary energy behind it. And he's really done a terrific job of promoting housing. This East Street School site was one of the things that he talked about a lot, and eventually it is coming to pass. This is an image on the right here of what is being proposed now by Wayfinders. And the Housing Trust also provides funding and acts as a facilitator in housing projects. Next slide, please. So we're also continuing to work as a community on many things that are talked about in the master plan, adequately addressing homelessness and the need for more affordable housing, Belchertown Road and East Street School. The VFW site, we recently purchased the Veterans of Foreign Wars site down on the other side of the railroad tracks, and we're developing that into a shelter and affordable housing, and that's a very exciting project. We're repairing aging existing infrastructure, and I can attest to that because I live on Heatherstone Road, and they've been really doing a terrific job of rebuilding the road. Bridges and sidewalks as well. We just finished sidewalks along Boltwood Avenue in front of Amherst College and the hotel. And so that's a really exciting project to see these things come to pass. We have a lot of new sidewalks around the North Common. Constructing new sidewalks along East Hadley Road, Mill Lane, Amity Street, Belchertown Road, as I said, Heatherstone Road, I love it, and Boltwood Avenue. And we're also addressing large capital projects in a time of rising costs, which we've really been kind of astounded by. But anyway, the library and the elementary school, we're happy to celebrate the fact that the elementary school seems to be coming in under budget. And then we have the fire station and the DPW site to still think about and work on. So we're also updating the zoning bylaw and the general bylaw. The general bylaw was recently amended to include preservation of historically significant buildings. The zoning bylaw, we added ADUs and flood maps. We have the University Drive rezoning coming before Town Council tonight, and we also have the solar bylaw that we're working on. And we continue to apply principles of environmental sustainability townwide in terms of stretch building code, net zero for municipal buildings, and solar bylaw. Next slide, please. Okay. Um, So I'm going to stop talking and thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure talking about all the accomplishments and how we've managed to implement some of the master plan.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any clarifying questions from the council before I recess our council meeting and go on to the public forum? Bob Hegner.
Yeah, Chris, I'd appreciate it if you could talk a little bit about what the town is doing for senior housing and for workforce housing. I mean, we've covered affordable housing pretty well, but I don't know that we're doing anything for the others. Can you please um, discuss what the town is doing?
Well, we are talking to some developers who are interested in building senior housing, but nothing has really gelled as of yet. In terms of workforce housing, I think that's really a difficult one because there aren't programs at the state level that are available to promote workforce housing. So it's really up to developers to choose to develop properties or housing that is, not as expensive as much of the housing that is being developed in Amherst. I think that's definitely something we need to work on, but it's kind of a challenge to figure out how to make that work.
Okay. Jennifer?
Yes, I wanted to ask, you probably mentioned it, but for the next master plan, is that under the purview of the planning board or is the council?
The planning board, and then it comes to the council.
The planning board will actually form that committee?
I think that's probably the case. Chris?
I don't know. That hasn't been worked out yet. I think that the comprehensive planning committee was probably set up by the select board.
Yeah.
But once it comes to actually refining the master plan and adopting it, the planning board has the primary role, and then the town council has another role, also adopting it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Are there other questions? That one, Jennifer? Okay, Kathy?
Thanks, Chris, for that sweeping presentation. So I have two questions. The first is, are you, knowing that you're leaving the amazing service you've given to the town over all these years, do you or the planning staff have a list of, if there were the changes to the planning master plan, where do you think attention needs to go? Just a laundry list, and you don't have to say yes or no on the spot. The second is, I think there's often the impression that we have a lot of open land that can be built on. And I was looking at a map on how much of our land is wet. So if we asked you for where is there acreage where there's nothing on it right now that is potentially developable, would that be something you all could do without a huge amount of work?
That is really challenging because much of Amherst is either very rocky or very wet. So if you look at, some of the areas in the north, well, and it also, some of Amherst doesn't have sewer or water. So if you look at some of the areas in the northeast quadrant of town, it's fairly wet. The water is close to the surface, and there's no water and sewer up there. There's no water, I think, because of water pressure. I think the sewer is mainly, it could be built if the town had the intention to do that. But so land is wet, rocky, no sewer, no water. But we also, I think, in my opinion, and also in the opinion of the people who put together the master plan, want to preserve our outlying areas and not have all of our farmland and forests taken over by housing. So we'd like to concentrate housing in places that are already developed. It's very challenging to find places in Amherst now where you can build single-family homes, for instance. So the idea of adding ADUs to already existing neighborhoods is probably a good idea. The idea of potentially loosening up on duplexes is probably something that should be looked at. But in terms of finding large swaths of land developable in town is not something that's really reasonable,
Thank you.
in my opinion.
Pam Rooney?
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. I had actually the same question of, is the planning department compiling its list of potential updates and revisions? Um, And secondly, if 2030 is the target year for a major update, it looks like the planning board is the group that will consult and utilize town staff to start identifying the process. So I'm guessing, or I'm asking, would we see activity on that 2 to 3 years before the 2030 deadline?
I think we'll have to start in 2025, and it will involve town council. We'll have to ask for an appropriation to hire a consultant to help us with this. I would say all of the planners have mental lists of things that need to be updated or changed in the master plan, but I don't think we have a document where we've actually put that down on the paper. So that's a good suggestion. I don't really have qualms about the existing master plan. I think there are some things in it that are outdated or some things that we've already accomplished that could be eliminated. And certainly our approach to various topics has changed over the years since this was really written in about 2007. So it was being edited in 2008. So by the time it was adopted, it was already, reflective of the thought processes that were in the mid 2000s rather than in the mid 2020s. So there are probably a lot of things that will need to change, but this is going to be a community conversation. It's not really something that the planning department is, going to be. The planning department isn't necessarily going to be leading the topics. The planning department can lead the process, but not the ideas that come to play.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the council? Okay, then I'm going to, first of all, thank Chris. This is, it's always interesting to look at this and say, gee, we did do that, but we still have to do this.
Yep.
We are going to now recess the regular town council meeting and move immediately into the public forum on the master plan. And Chris, we'd like you to stay in the room. Thank you. So we've already called, I have to call the master plan meeting, the public forum to order. This is the annual public forum of the master plan. At the conclusion of the public forum, we will reconvene our regular meeting. I've already talked about the open meeting law and our connectivity, and we have called a quorum, and I can see that people are still here and no one else has been added since the last counselor. There will be a public comment period during the public forum and one general public comment period during the regular meeting. It's a requirement that during the public forum, half of the time be devoted to public comment and questions, etc. So with that, having just finished the primer without much change in the audience here or in the room, I'm going to suggest that we not have an additional presentation and we move immediately to any questions or comments. So if you're in the audience and you would like to comment on the master plan, please make sure you've registered with Athena. If you're on Zoom and you would like to comment, please raise your hand at this time. Okay, right now I'm not seeing any hands. Athena, we officially started this part of the meeting at 6:15.
6:16.
Okay. So we are officially now open for public comment. This is an opportunity for people in the audience, either in the room are on Zoom to ask questions, to raise issues about the master plan, perhaps even things they'd like to see in future master plans. Ah. John Sheldon, please enter the room, state your name and where you live. And we ask that you keep your remarks to 3 minutes.
Hi, that's John Sheldon. I live on Sunset, and I'll keep my remarks short, but I just listened to the rehash of the current master plan from 2020, and the comment was made about how public parking may not have been adequately addressed according to the master plan, which I would support that assessment. I think our central downtown definitely needs more public parking to support retail businesses, to support restaurants, to support commerce, to support visitors. My wife owns a retail business in town, and she knows many business owners. And a common complaint among her customers and business owners is how little public parking there is to support their businesses. So I think I would encourage the council and the making of the next master plan to better address this need. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, John. Arlie, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hi, my name is Arlie Gould. I live
I'm
in.
sorry, Arlie, you need to speak up.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry. Arlie Gould, South Amherst. It was just interesting to me listening to the master plan. I heard words about preservation and of cultural aspects, and given, as you know, I talk a lot about the Jones Library. I just thought that was interesting in the context of what's happening with the Jones Library. So if there was an emphasis in the past thinking about preservation, seems things have changed a bit, maybe, at least in context of this project. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Arlie. Are there any more people who would like to make public comment? I'm going to ask one more time. And Frank, at this point, we have actually had the opportunity open for half of the meeting. Are there any other people who would like to make public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the public forum and seek a second.
Second.
Thank you. We now will take a roll call vote for adjournment. Pat DeAngelis.
Aye.
Anna Devlin Gothier.
Aye.
Counselor Ette is still absent. Lynn Griesmer, aye. Counselor Haneke.
Aye.
Bob Hagner.
Aye.
Counselor Lord.
Aye.
Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Counselor Ryan is absent. I'm sorry. Thank you. Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Andy Steinberg.
Aye.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
Counselor Walker is also still absent. Okay, the public forum is adjourned and we will move immediately. We will reconvene the town council meeting. Chris, we'd still like you to stay, okay? So before we start the formalities, of the meeting, we would like to take an opportunity as a town council to thank Chris. Chris is retiring at the end of this month. I think that's the date. And we have a small token to say thank you. Now you know why we made you come out of your room.
I see.
So
Thank you
Chris,
so much. Those are beautiful. It's really been a pleasure working for the town of Amherst. I've been here for 21 years and it's a wonderful place to live and work. And it's always stimulating, always different. Every day is different, new surprises, and I've really enjoyed it tremendously. So thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you for being a part of us for all these years. Thanks. So we are now back in the regular meeting. I just want to make sure that I have, so it's the regular meeting of the town council. It's the 23rd of September, and we are now moving on to the rest of our business. We've already talked about the open meeting law, and we have actually made sure that all counselors can hear us, and no additional counselors have joined us. So we're going to begin with announcements. Can you place the announcements on the screen? Thank you. We have a council meeting coming up in October on both the 7th and the 21st. We have Community Resource Committee will meet on the 24th, Finance on October 1st, and GOL will meet this Thursday at 6:30, and TSO also this Thursday at 10. I also want to mention there is a Four Towns meeting on September 28th at 9 o'clock at the Regional Middle School. On your screen, you'll see a postcard that many of you have received. This is a very important postcard. This is a very important project. It's not just another company soliciting you to join them for your electricity. This is in fact an opportunity for you to have your same supplier, whether it in our case it is Eversource, but without opting out, you will have part of your energy now supplied through green sustainable capabilities. You've received something in the mail. Again, it's an important document. If you don't respond or opt out, you will automatically go into the VGE Standard Green Program. If you do opt out, then we really advise you to call the number on the screen, go to the website, and talk to a specialist and ask any questions you may have. Okay. And the second side of the postcard just gives you a little more sense of the fact that your electric bill will not change. You'll still pay Eversource. There, however, will be a statement about your sustainable energy. So, and particularly when I want to point out that this is a collaborative effort of Amherst, Northampton, and Pelham. And there is an upcoming public forum on it on the September 26th from 7 to 8. And the link to that public forum is on your screen and also on the town website. Thank you. Okay, the next one is District 2 is having a meeting. They're going to try something which is both being in person. We will be in this room and virtual by the Zoom. So that meeting is this coming Monday, a week from now, September 30th at 6:30. And finally, we want to recognize that on September 29th is Gold Star Mother Day. This is a day set aside to recognize women who are the mother, stepmother, adoptive mother, or foster mother of a U.S. Armed Forces member who died while serving in action against the enemy. Tracy Taylor was presented this award this year. Her son was killed in action in Iraq in 2007.
And just a note, she's donated her Gold Star flag to the town.
And I'm sorry, she has donated a
She's-
Gold Star flag to the town.
That's right.
Thank you. We have no hearing. At this time, we will move to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak during public comment who is in the town room, make sure you have signed up with Athena. Anybody who would like to speak who is on Zoom, please raise your hand at this time. Do we have anybody in the room? Okay. Public comments on matters within the jurisdiction of the town council. Residents are welcome to express their views for up to 3 minutes. The council will not engage in a dialogue or comment on a matter raised during general public comment. Public comments are not reflective of the opinions of the town council. I see one hand. We're going to go ahead and recognize that hand, and after that, move on to the rest of our agenda. Maria Kopecki, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Thank you very much. Maria Kopicki, South Amherst. I am speaking tonight to make the council aware that the petition that has been circulating about the Jones Library Building project has achieved more than 1,000 signatures at this point. This petition has been circulating to take the pulse of the community, and people were asked to sign if they opposed cuts to sustainability and historic features, if they opposed authorization of any additional town funds besides the 46 million authorized, and to tell us that they would like the demolition expansion project to stop now and pivot to an affordable repair and renovation option. 87% of respondents said stop now and pivot. 76 said do not authorize any more money. 72% said do not cut historic and sustainability. This is to date. Of the people who responded online, they were offered the opportunity to say whether they had ever supported the project or had changed their mind. Fully 31% of respondents had changed their mind about the project. They had previously supported this project, but now do not support the project anymore. And the reasons that they gave were cost, 81%, the fundraising gap that exists and is expected to continue to exist, 65%, sustainability, 56%, and his impacts, the negative impacts to the historic Jones, 67%. The response to this petition has been enthusiastic. People are hungry to express to you, our town leaders, how they feel about this and how they would like you to please stop pursuing this project and pivot to a more rational and affordable option. This is not a handful of disgruntled people, as we have been described by some on this council and some in town. This is a lot of people in town. Please heed this. Please do your job. The town council holds the purse strings. You need to look at this project, look at its fiscal viability, and take action. You need to stop this. Going out to bid when you don't even know what's going to happen to deal with the adverse effects does not make any sense. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Alicia Walker has joined us. Alicia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Arlie, please enter the room, state your name and where you live.
Hi, this is Arlie again. Thank you.
Please speak more into your mic. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'd like to talk, kind of following a little on Maria. I'd like to talk about the name calling that is going on around this library issue. So far, I've been called a naysayer, a stinker, a NIMBYist, a vocal minority that ruins all of Amherst's projects. And these don't really bother me that much. But there is one comment that does. And it goes like this. If you are interested in historic preservation and sustainability, which are interrelated, you are a privileged, self-centered complainer who doesn't care at all about children, teenagers, English language learners, people with disabilities, the poor, and the homeless. This is a narrative that has evolved in response to those who disagree with the project. And I've been reading and hearing it for the last few months. Let me be clear, I have and do support these groups in my personal life. I just don't feel that an overlarge, overexpensive project that destroys a significant portion of the historic building is the best way to support these groups. And I have heard other proposals and ideas about how to support these groups. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, Arlie. That's the end of public comment. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. The following items were selected because they were considered to be routine and it was reasonable to expect they would pass with no controversy. If you would want to remove an item, please state so after I read the motion and before I seek a second. The motion is to move the following items and the printed motions thereunder and approve those items as a single unit. 8A, authorization for town council president to sign a letter in support of the Northern Tier Rail project on behalf of the town council. That letter has been revised twice and it is now in your packet. 8B, acceptance of deed to property located on Sand Hill Road, Shutesbury, for water supply protection and land conservation purposes. That was an item earlier on our agenda, and this is just the acceptance of the deed. 9A and B, approval of town manager appointments for the Community Preservation Act Committee and the Board of Health. And 11A, approval of the following meeting minutes, September 9, 2024, regular meeting. I don't see any hands, therefore I'm seeking a second.
Second.
Thank you. We're going to move immediately to the vote. Anna Devlin Gothier.
Aye.
Councillor Ette is absent. Lynn Griesmer's aye. Councillor Haneke.
Aye.
Bob Hegner.
Aye.
Councillor Lord.
Aye.
Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Councillor Ryan is absent. Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Andy Steinberg.
Aye.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
Councillor Walker.
Yes.
Pat DeAngelis.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. We have no resolutions or proclamations. And with regard to presentations and discussions, if we have time at the end of the action items, which mostly deal with roads and public way, we will move on to discuss town manager goals. With that, we're going to move immediately to the action items. And the first action item that was not on the consent agenda is the public way request, sidewalk and road improvements on West Street between Potwine Lane and Long Meadow Drive. I've asked the clerk of the town council to place a map so that people can refresh their memories on this. Town Services and Outreach Committee have met and forwarded this to us. Andy Steinberg, as chair of that committee, do you have any comments?
I think that the report that we provided in writing, which has now been in 2 successive meeting packets, really covers the territory. We did not do this quickly. We asked for Transportation Advisory Committee and the Disability Access Advisory Committee to provide us with their input, and came back strongly. TAC's is a written comment that is also in the packet for this meeting. And TAAC just stated to us that they were fully supportive of the proposal. And we did have conversations with the Superintendent of Public Works, Guilford Mooring, and I think that we were very impressed. And so it was a unanimous vote, one member absent.
Thank you. Are there any, I'm going to make a motion, seek a second, and then we'll ask for questions. To approve the permanent changes to the public way on West Street as shown on the conceptual plan titled Sidewalks and Double Splinter Islands dated 1/2/24. In other words, January 2nd, 2024. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there questions? Kathy?
Well, I have two questions. One, we did get the very positive review from TAC, and they noted that there's many efforts along this area to impose traffic calming, slowing. Meanwhile, the speed limit is 50, so they were suggesting we drop the speed limit. So I just wanted to put that on the future to-do list as an idea, a concept, and that it's 40 along part of the road, then it turns 50. And if you drive there, you can see cars stepping on the accelerator pedal when they see that 50 sign. So it's, even though it's a short piece. So that's just a comment on this. My second is more a question on how, when DPW was working on these, how they prioritize. Because when I first ran for council, there was an approval for a sidewalk study along Northeast Street that was presented by a group of residents. They plotted out where it would go. JCPC approved it. There was a study done. And as far as I know, it's in a file box somewhere, or it's a file somewhere. So as money becomes available, or potentially becomes available, how are we, the town, setting priorities, and how would the council know what guides those priorities? Because I don't ever remember a review on here's possible places for sidewalks, and we've rated them A, B, C, or however. So it's a broader question, not an opposal to this.
With the town manager's approval, I'm going to go ahead and recognize Superintendent of DPW, Guilford Mooring. Paul, is that okay? Okay, Guilford, thank you for joining us. Did you have a response to that question?
I have a response. Also, I froze. I have a response, but I also had a question first. Is it Northeast Street or is it East Pleasant Street?
I meant East Pleasant, yeah, it's got the wrong street. It's the one
Okay.
that, yeah, it's the one that you did do a survey. As I thought I needed a map, but thanks.
no.
Guilford.
I thought I was losing. I wasn't remembering right. So East
it's
Pleasant
Kathy.
Street was brought forward, and we've been working diligently on that. There are some issues along East Pleasant Street, but we'll probably have a conceptual plan for you before the spring about what can be done on East Pleasant Street. We had a few more, a few issues with wetlands we had to talk about on East Pleasant, and a couple other ones. The project you have before you now came from a citizen's complaint. A couple citizens complained about it. And actually there are no wetland issues. It was a very straightforward realignment. We also had a request from PVTA for bus stop improvements in this area. So that kind of drove this a little farther ahead of other projects because it was a relatively simple thing for us to work out and put together. The biggest thing we had to wrap our head around was how to deal with the intersection at Potwine, but we kind of just left that intersection alone got the crosswalks in and put the splitter islands in and the bus stops. So it was a much easier project than East Pleasant Street, which you should have a preliminary plan to look at before the spring.
Okay, Kathy, is there any follow-up on that?
That's great news, and I'm going to let the people who have been waiting in the wings for a long time make sure if they're not listening tonight, they hear that. Thanks, Guilford.
Thank
You're
you. Pam Rooney.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a question that, since it looks like you're repaving this stretch, has consideration been given to looking at all the water and sewer lines that are under that road and making sure that they're up to snuff, since we have been experiencing water line breaks here and there? Is this the time to do it, and is there funding for that?
Guilford?
We did look at this area, and there are no concerns with the little section that we're doing that there's any water or sewer issues in there.
Thank you. Andy Steinberg?
Yes, I guess I'm supplementing the prior report I gave for Town Services and Outreach Committee in response to something that Kathy had raised, and that is about issues that were raised by TAC in its response that were additional. They said, we support this, but these are some things that we also want you to think about category. So when we were confronted with making a recommendation, we really had to focus on the questions that they were enthusiastic about the project, which was what the recommendation was. We did have a little bit of a conversation about the speed limit question, and it goes back to prior work that we've done on talking about speed limits. As a town, we need to be very thoughtful, but not shy away from reviewing speed limits, but to recognize that this kind of a speed limit change would require a substantial study by a qualified traffic engineer to make a recommendation as a part of the process. It is not a brief or inexpensive enterprise, and I think that we should recognize that when alerted to speed limit questions, we should consider it and consider it with care, because it's something that is asking for resources and in order to even just study whether it is possible to do that. And Superintendent Mooring can supplement if he feels that I've misstated anything in that additional response.
Guilford, no? He just shook his head no. Guilford, is 116 a state highway, but we own it?
116, this section of 116 is the town's responsibility. We're responsible for maintenance and oversight of this area.
But it is a state highway.
It is a state highway. If we want to change the speed limit on it, we do have to get help. We do have to get concurrence from the state on that. If
Thank
there
you.
was a school on this road and you wanted to put school zones in now, you'd have to also get concurrence from the state for that as well.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion's been made and seconded. We'll move to a vote. I'm starting with myself. Lynn Griesmer is an aye. Counselor Haneke.
Aye.
Bob Hagner.
Aye.
Counselor Lord.
Aye.
Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Counselor Ryan's absent. Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Andy Steinberg.
Aye.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Pat DeAngelis.
Aye.
Anna Devlin Gothier.
Aye.
And Counselor Ette is absent. Okay. We're going to move on to our next item, and this is intersection improvements to Southeast Street between Main Street and College Street. We have with us again Superintendent of Public Works Guilford Mooring. And I'm going to ask Guilford to make a brief statement or comment and kind of where are we on this? And then we're going to open it with a motion to refer, and then I'm actually going to make the motion to refer. To refer the conceptual changes to the public way on Southeast Street between Main Street and College Street as outlined in the CDM Smith report titled Fort River Elementary School Traffic Engineering Services, dated July 2024, to the Town Services and Outreach Committee for a report to the Town Council by December 16th, 2024. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Guilford, please go ahead.
Thank you. So we hired CDM to do some analysis of the traffic counts that were created for the school project. We did some intersection analysis. We looked at a lot of different things, and based on everything we looked at and how the traffic flows here, including some information we gathered during the installation of the new traffic light we have at the entrance to the school, we pretty much, this is what we feel is the best solution for this corridor. And there are other solutions, but we feel this is the best solution. We have a series of 4 roundabouts. It allows this to slow traffic through the corridor, the entire corridor, not just at the intersections. And it allows for traffic to move in and out of the schools. So if there's probably tons of questions. I know that there's tons of questions, so I'll stop there.
Guilford, could you just orient people to what we're looking at on this screen?
So on the screen, the top of the screen is Fort River School, which is east. The bottom of the screen is west. Main Street is to the left of the screen, or north. And College Street is to the right of the screen, which is south.
Okay. And as in the past, when things are referred, we ask the counselors to, raise issues that they want to make sure that the committee to which it's referred will be looking at. Kathy.
First off, thanks, Guilford. I've been, as I think you know, I've been asking to have a proposal before us for a while. And as far as I can see, this is probably a pretty expensive proposal. So I have 2 question comments, and then I will repeat them and send them to TSO. I didn't read every piece, but the cutoff was addressed in the CD Smith piece, but I'm not sure I agree with it. That cutoff that allows you to avoid the south round, what would become a roundabout, and come in, I think is dangerous. And they talked about it in terms of traffic flow. It lets the traffic keep going and avoid the intersection. But what it also does is threatens kids and threatens bicycles and threatens cars that are coming in and out of the school. There was a member of the school building committee, she's not on anymore, that had a severe accident there because people don't stop at the stop sign. They look at it as a runway and they just keep going. So there was a decision in this proposal to leave it there. So I want to question whether that makes sense if you don't view it from the car point of view, but you view it from the people point of view. So that's comment number 1. Comment number 2 is I can't see them here. You may have them in more detail. Crosswalks. The only advantage of the existing lights is I can press a button and get across the street if I want to walk. And we're going to have more people crossing the street because it's not just the school, but we've got some apartment buildings coming in this area. So where the crosswalks would go and how you would cross safely is a question. And I know when we did the roundabout at Pomeroy Lane, the solution was to put blinking lights to add a lot to allow something to happen, but particularly during school time. Right now, one of the things the school personnel does is they stand out in the middle of the street and put their hands up and stop the cars so the kids can get across the various intersections safely. So it's just thinking in terms of walkers or bicycles. How do they intersect with what would become 1, 2, 3, 4 roundabouts? I'm not going to ask a question about the price tag now because I'm sure it's pretty high. I think it would be good to first try to figure out what makes sense. Thank you.
Guilford, did you want to address any of that?
The only thing would do is that the crosswalks are not shown here. One of the questions that's out there for a future decision in the TSO or somewhere is, do you want to add a sidewalk on both sides of the road for East Street? There's not a sidewalk on the west side of the road on Southeast Street right now. If you did add that sidewalk, you would need more crosswalks. And if you didn't need that sidewalk, you'd have the same crosswalks that you have now. So that is how this would lay out. So if you add a sidewalk, you have to add more crosswalks. If you leave that sidewalk off, then you have the same number you have now, and then they would be placed strategically to fit with the roundabouts at that time. And that was just something we didn't dive too far into it because that question about a sidewalk was the key question.
Thank you. And I just the last thing, and it's for the committee. At one point, Guilford, you had talked about widening the street, and I didn't see whether that was considered, getting an extra lane out of some of the public way. Did you decide that wasn't needed?
We decided that you could add another lane, but then you would also you would need to signalize this more than it is now. And then we also did not find, when we installed the temporary traffic lights at the driveway in and out of the school now, we found a very high instance of people ignoring the stoplight when it actually functioned as a stoplight. If they saw a red light in front of them and there was a green light behind it, they ignored the light in front of them and would drive through the entrance to the school and then go into the intersection. But the green light at Main Street was needed to clear the traffic coming out of the school that are making a right-hand turn. If you did not have a green light at Main Street, people would come out of the school and you could only stack 6 or 8 cars because if the light was red. So those movements kind of led itself that you could add a third lane, but adding the third lane didn't really work that well with 2 traffic lights so close together.
Okay. Pam Rooney.
Thank you. Appreciate this study. It looks intriguing. I had a couple reactions to it, and it looks from the graphic that there must be more traffic going through the Main Street Northeast Street intersection than there is on Route 9 and Southeast Street, which surprises me a lot. I would think that Route 9 would be the heaviest traffic and need a bigger circle. Second, I would echo what I heard Kathy talk about, the Belchertown Road access. I take that because I don't want to go to the stoplight and turn right. But if I had a roundabout and I had a right turn capability, I probably would do that. It feels like that should be access to the bank, but not a through passage. Again, for protection of pedestrians and the speed at which I sometimes go through that access way. Let's see. Oh, the other thing was the complication of the access to Southeast Street into the Cumberland Farms zone. That seems that also needs to get a little bit of a second look, that it may need some consideration of entrance only because it's so close to the intersection. All in all, I appreciate seeing this as a concept and look forward to seeing it worked out in more detail. Thank.
Okay. Jennifer?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't want to repeat what's been said, although I did bike that today, and wow, it's a lot of roundabouts in a short span, but we can, I guess, address, discuss that in TSO. I did want to ask if this has been, if this has been put before the safe routes to school. I think we have a group of parents in Amherst that's part of that. And if that's how that would get referred, if that's something TSO would refer, as we sometimes ask opinions of TAC. But I think it would be, important to solicit their input. Thank you.
Counselor Haneke.
Thank you. In addition to some of the questions that have already been asked, I have a couple others, and I know this is a concept plan, but the north school entrance on this plan seems to really encroach on the common, especially if you start putting sidewalks on. At least that's what it looks like on this plan, that it's really kind of taking a chunk out of the common, where it might not need to if you move it a different way. So I just want to look at that and if there's a way to minimize taking that chunk out of the common. The the west side of the common, so the old Southeast Street, I think is how it's labeled here, is already used as a cutting through, particularly with buses and others. How are we, if we do this, how's that going to look, and has the traffic study studied that of people using that side of the common, the west side, to cut what would be then two roundabouts, and coming in much more heavily onto that lower roundabout? And does that affect the planning of the roundabouts, or even the planning of the size of the street and the turns into that old Southeast Street? Coming out of the bank, this concept plan shows there's a entrance into the bank and an exit, and then it appears maybe it's cutting the farther north exit and entrance completely out. Maybe not, just because it's hard to read the concept plan. They've got arrows for a specific one and nothing for the other one. Would people being able to come out of that bank entrance be able to turn left? And does that present problems both for safety and for other reasons? And are you actually cutting the two other entrances to that bank parking lot off, given where the solid lines are and no showing of entrances and exits? The one from there and the one from the road access. I think I have three more. That you sort of addressed the sidewalk plan. And so I was curious what the sidewalk plan on Main Street would be, given that it looks like you're actually removing a lane of pavement on this concept plan. So would the sidewalk also move? How would that sidewalk look on Main Street then? Sort of, we'll get it more presumably when we see a more than just a concept plan, but I'm curious about that. The north entrance roundabout seems small compared to all the others. Is that because most people will be going straight through? So you don't really need it bigger. And the Main Street roundabout, the Main Street, Northeast Street, the farthest north one, that roundabout, if you're coming east on Main Street and to turn south, again, this goes to the would people use to cut through, going south then on Southeast Street, it looks like in this concept plan that you don't even have to enter the roundabout, sort of. Maybe you only half enter it. So I'm curious how that works. It's a very tight turn. And how would that traffic work and that turn work while others are trying to also either come straight through northeast to southeast or do the 3/4 and all of that? I'm sure it'll show up more in when we get farther, but that looked very strange to me. And is that, how's that going to be dealt with? I know at Triangle Street, it's like two completely different lanes that you merge into, kind of how this North School 2-lane entrance is looking now.
Did you have any comments, Guilford?
We looked at all those, and this is we did look at all those things you're talking about, and we've taken them all to account, and we can sit down more when we talk about it in GSO and go more through it if you'd like. Or I can slog through it now. It's your choice.
Did you want to go through it now, manager? Why don't you just briefly go through it now?
Okay. So the roundabout, at the north entrance to the school, that is just shown, it's in there. It actually can move farther to the east. If we do move it farther to the east, one of the things we were talking about is how to accommodate the law office next door to it. We might want to work out some arrangement with the law office that they actually exit onto the driveway of the school, and maybe this becomes a public way at some point. And then they're not in between the two roundabouts, and we can shift it farther to the east. The lane that Mandy Jo was talking about, that our Councilor Henneke was talking about, that comes into from downtown on Main Street and then turns right. You do enter into the roundabout to make the right-hand turn if you're a car. There is a little bit of extra area that's shown in the drawing, and that is a raised area that's for trucks to track across, because trucks would need that extra space to make the turn. Going down on the west side, we don't think the PVTA bus is going to want to change its route. Right now, PVTA goes down the old southeast side, and we've made that accommodation so that people coming from Main Street heading east who go to Belchtown Road or continue down Southeast Street can go through the cut through there, go into the roundabout, and continue on their way of travel. We expect that to be a good use for it and actually cut down some of the traffic going through the Main Street and the school entrance roundabout. So we've kind of left that there and accommodated them. The driveway for the bank. So for the bank, there has to be a dedicated left turn lane for the roundabout. So what we did was we left it where it is now, but the discussion can be had if we want to move this lane on the east side of the bank to the roundabout and do away with it. And that's why there's not been a lot of real finesse with how the circulation will be in the bank. We have to resolve that question. If we do move this lane closer to the roundabout, we end up having to take a piece of the bank's property to accommodate it. But that would eliminate this cut through, and you could turn that cut through into a driveway for the bank that comes into the bank and then goes back out of the bank, or it can just be a bike path for people going, or a pedestrian way to go to the school. So that's still a question that has to be resolved, which we didn't really tackle because we wanted to see what people's appetite was for taking additional property. I think I hit most of them. If I missed one.
Okay. Anything else, Councilor Hanneke? Anna.
Hi, Guilford. Thank you for sharing this with us. My biggest question has been alluded to in some ways, but with the sidewalks, but we've heard some really compelling stories from especially students at Fort River seeking access to the school via bike. And I'm curious, as you're looking into your sidewalk plan, whether you're just looking at sidewalks the way they've always existed in Amherst. I know they exist in multiple ways, but you know what I mean? Or if you're also looking at protected bike lanes or additional just painted bike lanes, and how that's being incorporated into this. I mean, it seems like this is such a major project. I know often I'm very kindly explained to that a project isn't necessarily big enough to warrant putting in a bike lane. This feels like we're putting in some major new roundabouts, and I'm curious about what the opportunities are for adding an infrastructure that would support safely biking along this route.
Guilford?
I don't need a full answer. Sorry, I would love some sort of response now, but I'm not expecting a full answer now.
Okay.
We haven't really decided. We've discussed the fact that it might be better just make an 8-foot wide or 10-foot wide sidewalk, which is more of a multi-use path off road for bicycles and pedestrians, versus putting bike lanes on the road. The goal with the roundabouts too is to slow traffic down so that experienced cyclists who commute through this area, not going to the school, but commute other places, could pass through and feel comfortable. But then for younger bicyclists who aren't as comfortable, could be on the multi-use path in front of the school. So that's kind of how we're heading our bets towards this.
Mhm. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Anna? No, okay. So Guilford, I have a couple questions. Well, I thank the people who already asked about pedestrians and bikes. Am I correct that the entrance that would be to the school to the farthest right is for buses only, and the other entrance is for cars only? Okay, that remains as it has been the plan for the school. So that the bigger circle, as you come off of Route 9 or College Street, is really has to accommodate buses coming in and out, which tends to be a little bit, they're longer. They require more room to come in, come out, turn around, whatever. So that was I just wanted to confirm that the entrances and the exits have remained the same. I personally think we're being short-sighted with regard to Route 9. We already have one apartment complex, another one being talked about, and a whole other big one that we're writing. And if anything happens in Amherst, it's future growth. And so I really wonder if, although we see, and believe me, I've seen it, the traffic jams on Southeast Street, I really wonder whether we need to consider a larger traffic circle at the Route 9 entrance rotary. And my final question really is, Paul, and this is looking down the road. So we have bids that came in beautifully for the school with about $4 million. Do we know for a fact that that money can be used for this?
So if this were a private developer, roadway improvements would be required of them to accommodate their project. Many school projects have used this money for infrastructure improvements associated with the construction of the building. It is not reimbursable by the MSBA. That's the difference. So this would be it's just be money that we have that we would allocate to this. It'd be a council decision ultimately.
Okay, so pushing further, is there anything about the language that we use to go out to the voters that would prevent us from using that money for this?
We'd have to get the legal opinion on that. I think that if it's an associated cost with the school, we're putting a backstop in, things like that. So I think, if it's associated with the project, we just double check the language on that.
Okay, and the final question is, I'm sure the cost for this is more than we just think we're going to save on the school. At what point would we actually know that we have the savings from the school to do these roads?
When the school opens.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm and raise those questions about costs.
Because we do have contingency associated with the schools. We want to maintain that contingency because
Right.
you just don't know what's going to happen during the construction process of a school. And it's always good to have a healthy contingency.
Right, thank you. I'm gonna, actually, let's see, Jennifer, no, yes, you did. I'm gonna skip over to Bob and then come back to Kathy and to Jennifer. Bob?
Yeah, I just wanted to alert Guilford. I'm sure you're aware of this, but the in and out to Cumberland Farms is very dangerous right now. I drive by there every day I go to town, and particularly the entrance and exit, which you can see basically right by what the square thing on there is where the gas pumps are. Just around there is if people are making a left turn, they have to stick way out into the oncoming lane in order to see cars come around the corner, and that won't change by putting a rotary in there. So if there's a way to kind of figure out how to fix that problem, that would be a good thing. Also, the building across the street is now, I believe, an apartment building. And there's going to be a lot of traffic making a left turn into there right around that spot too. So just take those things into account when you finalize the plan.
Point of order, can we please confirm Councilor Ettick in here and be heard?
I'm sorry, yes. Thank you. Can you hear us? Counselor Preka?
Yes.
Counselor Ete? Yes, thank you. Okay, now we'll go back to Kathy.
Okay, I'll be quick. Just, the school construction, all the design, as you know, it has been built, bid, and the work is about to start. So for that north entrance, one of the plans was to put a sign, "Welcome to the Fort River School," there. We need to interact with the design team so that we don't put anything near where your roundabouts are, Guilford, that then we have to take out. Because what Paul's answer on this money is the school is due to be finished, the building, by June 2026. The rest of the work will be ready for the kids to move in. But I wouldn't want to have to redo something that we just did in terms of paving and other things. So I don't know whether some pieces of this, these roundabouts by the entrances to the school, could be done before 2026. So it's a question that to put into TAC as opposed to the really big intersection ones. Could we get this in the works so it could be coordinated with the widening of the street and the aisle for the buses and the vans to go in and out, so we don't have to redo something we've just done? I wouldn't want to pay for it twice. And just so everyone knows, we've got about $9.8 million in contingency. So the 4.8 that we came in under is on top of money we already had. So there is this pretty substantial buffer sitting there with the whole project.
And the good news is interest rates are going down. So Jennifer Taub.
So is there a plan for how this would be funded? And is the plan not to start this until after the school is built? I mean, is this, I guess I was assuming this was something that was going to happen.
I'm directing your question to the town manager.
Well, first the council has to decide what you want to do. And then if you say, yes, we want to go in this direction, we'll work on the plans more. And then we'll come up with some recommendations for funding. So it's really, we have to know what direction you want to go to. This is the first time you're looking at this 4 roundabout model, kind of radical in some ways to some people, but when the engineers have looked at this, it's a very difficult site to have a school, as we know. And so this is one of the options that is being recommended by the DPW superintendent and the town engineer and the consultants. So if this is something that you agree to, and you're going to hear from a lot of people, I'm sure, as you consider this during TSO, and then we'll say, okay, here's what we'll go out and price it and see what's going to cut. We'll give you an estimate though.
And so there might be grant funding, because we've had other roundabouts funded that way.
Sure, we would look at grant funding, especially being close to a school. There are some funds for safe routes to school. They're usually not big money, but we could look at all options for that as well.
There is one that was talked about a couple years ago called intersections near schools.
Right.
So it's more than just little pieces. I just don't know what the pot of money looks like.
Sure.
So when the school does open in 2026 in September, the street will probably look the way it does now.
That's what I was asking Jennifer. So I don't know whether the 2 smaller roundabouts that affect the 2 entranceways could be done nearer to when the school opens to solve the in and out problem, and then the big ones. So it's a question that DPW, whether we like the whole thing, as Paul said, this is premature to even be asking that, but I don't know whether 2 could be done sooner and then the big ones later. And that would be a question that designers would have to deal with.
Okay. Are there any other
Yeah,
questions?
Guilford, I think Guilford wants to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Guilford, please.
So the town manager was correct. We need to have approval that this concept is kind of the way we want to go. And then it's close to $600,000 to get the final plans designed, and then we can move forward. So if everything went perfectly as you laid it out, that the TSO reports back in December, is that?
That is the motion.
Then that gives about 6 months, 6 to 8 months for final design. And then if it's accepted, we could probably begin construction in 24 now. We could begin construction before the school opens. But more than likely, construction will probably begin as the school is opening.
That'll really be popular. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist the side comment. Thank you, Guilford. Are there any other questions? I want to thank Guilford for working to address this issue. This is a question that's been out there ever since we chose this site for the school. So the motion's been made and seconded. We're going to move to a vote. Counselor Haneke.
Aye.
Bob Hegner.
Aye.
Counselor Lord.
Aye.
Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Counselor Ryan's absent. Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Andy Steinberg.
Aye.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Pat DeAngelis.
Aye.
Anna Devlin Gothier.
Aye.
Counselor Ette.
Aye.
Lynn Griesmer is an aye. It is unanimous with one person absent. Given that we have, several of us have been here since 5:30, I'm going to suggest we take a break of 10 minutes right now and come back. We will reconvene at 7:20. Okay. Please make sure you turn your video off and your audio. Thank you.
There are parts of town From the road to the house.
But you can only really see here and here and here and here. Yeah, and so it's really hard to see. Yeah. Last year.
Yeah, you're gonna get both sides.
I just used it, but I'm literally right start.
Yeah. I think it's not like. You can't use the line.
Yeah, so I'm not seeing the rest of them. Well, this year they're gonna be so sad.
I looked at.
Last year, we could drive, this year they'll probably drive themselves. Yeah, she wanted. I'll let you know about that, how's that? I think it's worth it. That's a challenge, there you go. I've taken my mom. And how'd she do? Mom does okay, for not climbing, right? Yeah. It's not. Much easier climbs, but for someone who's in their mid-70s, goes up to 2/3 of the walls, sometimes they fall over. Some of them are like climbing a ladder. Okay. Especially the one that's called the Yellow Brick Road. Okay.
As you return, please turn your video back on. So as you return, please turn your video back on. And Athena, would you please bring Mohammed in? Again, as you return, please turn your video back on. That way I know you're here. Counselor Ete, I know you're back. Anna, are you back? And Alicia, are you back?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is a request from the University of Massachusetts. It deals with vehicular directional signage. And we're joined tonight by Mohammed Abdullah, who is the project manager for at UMass Facilities and Campus Services. He's here to answer questions. There was a significant amount of information in your packet. We're actually going to show the item on your screen. And again, this is a referral unless somebody tells me they actually want to go ahead and vote. That's the one from last time. Can you, nope, that's overlay. That's the one. Okay, so the motion is to refer the referral of public way request, University of Massachusetts request to place campus vehicular directional signage in the public way. Is there a second to the motion?
Second, Rooney.
Thank you. So you see in front of you the places where
Can I ask a
people-
point of order? You
Yes.
read the title.
Oh, I'm
Not the actual motion. So
Yeah.
what is the motion that actually just got made?
I was looking at the wrong sheet. Ah,
To
there we go.
refer the request to approve the installation of 7 vehicular directional signs in the public way to the Town Services and Outreach Committee with a report to the Town Council by December 16, 2024.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second, Rooney.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was looking at the wrong sheet. Okay, so in front of you is a map that shows where these various signs would go. And in your packet, you've gotten a sense of that from the both the chart that shows them and also the sign. So the floor is open for questions. Counselor Haneke.
A couple of questions on a few of these signs. On the first sign, which is sign 07-021. I don't know how else to refer to these, location 07.
That is number 1 on our screen.
Number 1 on the, yeah. That sign looks extremely close to the curb and the actual traveling way. So I'd just like to know how far the edge of the sign is from the curb on a, I guess, a horizontal distance. I know there's vertical issues, but it was hard to tell whether mirrors, if cars get close to that curb, whether mirrors will be hitting the signs, especially trucks.
And let me just mention for Mohammed's information, the purpose again is to raise questions that the committee will answer. So we don't expect you to have answers to all of those kinds of questions, but this will be referred to TSO, and that's a question that will advance to TSO. Continue, Andy Jo.
Thanks. On location 08A dash 087, I think it's number 4.
Yes.
It was unclear where the right of way is. Because the pictures we got don't actually show the right of way. So I'd just like confirmation that that's actually in the right of way.
Okay.
Same for 08A 990 or number 5. Again, it doesn't really show where the right of way line is. So I wasn't sure that one was in the right of way.
Okay.
And then the last one, so paid, I guess it's labeled number 7, 08B 987. Um, It
Yeah.
seems like that one is planned to be put on the west side of the road, but intended to be seen by those traveling north. So those that will be traveling on the east side of the road. Um, and so that seems like a strange site issue to me, where the signage for directional purposes is not on the side of the road you're looking for signs. If you're going north, you'd be looking on the right side of the road, the east side of the road, not the west. So I'm curious why the decision was made to request a sign there on the west side of the road that is supposed to be directional for those traveling north.
Okay. And again, all of these will go to TSO. I have one question, and that is, this is really to Mohammed. All of these are to the east of the campus. Are there similar signs already on from the west of the campus? And if not, will you be coming back with requests for any of those if they are in Amherst? Mohammed?
Good evening, everyone. So should I start by answering all the 5 questions, or should I start the last one only?
Just ask the previous question will be forwarded to TSO.
Okay.
So,
B-
all right,
For
actually,
I would like if he can answer the one about particularly number 7
Okay.
sign. The other one's not, but number 7 would be nice to have
Thank
an
you.
answer.
okay.
okay.
So
Number 7
yeah,
is the question.
yeah, okay, yeah, my reaction to that is it's a two-way, it's a single lane two-way direction, and the sign is on the left. The content or the message of this sign is a left arrow that says UMass Amherst. And currently there's no sign in this on East Pleasant Street in that area that directs visitors, first-time visitors to UMass. We haven't explored the right side with full honesty, and it might be a private property. I haven't explored that. We run this by the consultant, and the consultant actually provide 2 or 3 options, all of which are on the left side of the road. So I can bring this question to them and see if there's any violation in that. But do you see a violation to that, or in that, or is this is there a precedent of something similar to that on the left side of the road, or you haven't seen that before?
Counselor Haneke.
I'm just having trouble visualizing how a sign on the left side of the road will help people traveling on the right side of the road, because I'm not sure it will be that obvious that it's referring to them versus people traveling south. So
Okay. Any further comments on any of the others, which was mostly about whether they were in the right of way?
there was one about distance to the curb.
Right.
Lynn? There is a house on the east side of East Pleasant Street, in that area, on the corner of the Strong and East Pleasant. There is a house there, according to Google Maps. So
Right there.
you do have to be concerned that there may be some property issues. I don't know what kind of right of way the town has there.
Any other questions, man? Counselor Haneke? Okay. Bob Hegner.
Yeah, that was the question. I just mentioned that there is a house there on Strong Street, and the corner of Strong Street and East Pleasant, on the right hand side, the east side. So that could be a possible conflict with placing a sign there.
Yeah, there's actually a house on both sides of the road there.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions or issues you want to make sure that if we refer this TSO deals with? Okay. So seeing none, the motion to refer is the motion on the table. Is there any question? If not, I'll move to a vote. Kathy?
I just, when this is being reviewed, I just was looking at the size of these signs. These are big signs. So the kinds of issues Mandy is raising, both on sight lines and everything, on the number of them and what else will be blocked if you have like 7 feet tall, so many feet wide. They're not like a little turn here. So
Right. So it's something the TSO should pay
should be
attention
worried
to.
about.
Yeah. Pam?
Yeah, I'd like to reiterate the proximity to the curb because it's not just in one, but it's in several of the illustrations that it shows very close to the curb. I'm more concerned about bicyclists that are being forced to the side who are, have a handle out there. And I think these are large signs, it's like a big piece of plywood, 4x8, are most of these signs. I think I read in the material that the consultant has conferred with the town engineer in terms of making sure there is no blockage or loss of visibility. So I appreciate that they took the time to do that.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, then the motion on the floor is to refer. I'll begin the vote with Bob Hegner.
Aye.
Councillor Lord?
Aye.
Pam Rooney?
Yes.
Councillor Ryan's absent. Kathy Shane?
Yes.
Andy Steinberg?
Aye.
Jennifer Taub?
Yes.
Councillor Walker?
Yes.
Pat DeAngelis?
Aye.
Anna Devlin Gothier?
Aye.
Councillor Ette?
Aye.
Lynn Griesmer is an aye, and Councillor Haneke.
Aye.
It's unanimous with one absent. Mohammed, you have your hand up.
Yes, I realized I didn't answer your question, Len, that these 7 locations were identified to be the only ones on the town of Amherst right of way. All the other locations as part of this project are on the UMass property. So that's why on the western side, there's nothing that showed. These are the only locations that came up through the analysis.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's helpful. Okay. We're going to move on. Thank you for joining us, Mohammed.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay. The next one, I'll read the title and then the motion. It's a referral of proposed University Drive Overlay District, adoption of overlay district changes to official zoning map by add the University Drive Overlay District.
Point of order. I think you have an old motion. May I?
I
read the-
do, so I want you to show the new motion up on the screen.
Okay.
And is it the one that you emailed me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So the motion on the screen is to refer the proposed University Drive Overlay District, adoption of overlay district, changes to official zoning map by adding the University Drive Overlay District to the Planning Board and the Community Resources Committee. And then on the bullets, the Community Resource Committee and Planning Board public hearings must be held no later than November 27th, 2024. That is within 65 days of the referral if we refer tonight. Second bullet, written planning board recommendation must be sent to the town council and community resource committee no later than 21 days of the close of the planning board public hearing. And the third bullet, written community resource committee recommendations and all materials must be sent to the town council and governance organization and legislation committee no later than 30 days of the close of the CRC public hearing. And then we have 2 more bullets. Written government and organization and legislation report on clarity, consistency, and actionability must be sent to the town council within 60 days of the close of the CRC public hearing. And finally, town council action is required within 90 days of the close of the CRC public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And Mandy Jo, thank you for helping write this very explicit motion. Okay, we're going to put something on the screen. We are joined tonight by Guilford Mooring, and I just want to note Chris Brestrup is also here, as well as Nate Malloy. And Nate, I believe you're the one that's going to speak to this. Am I correct?
Sure, yeah, I'll say a few words.
Please lean to your mic a little more so we can hear you.
Oh, goodness. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, usually I don't have that problem. So Nate Malloy, a planner with the town. I'll speak to the overlay, proposed overlay. It's something the planning board put forward. They discussed it for a number of
Hold
months
on.
last year.
You're coming through quite garbled. So
It's okay on my end for what it's worth. I don't know if that.
I think.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
think
I can
it's
hear
just
it
to
pretty
the,
well.
Yeah,
to
I
the
can hear
town
fine.
room. Okay. Let's try again, Nate.
Okay. Sorry, yeah, Nate Malloy, a planner with the town. This is a proposed overlay district, so the existing zoning remains. Essentially, it floats over. It's shown here, outlined in black, and so it's the properties between Amity Street and Route 9 along University Drive. It's an overlay that applies only to mixed-use developments. So, if someone wants to propose apartments, it's whatever the original zoning allows there, not what. So the overlay is really, as it name implies, a mixed-use overlay, and so it's to encourage mixed-use development. Mixed use by site plan review. The hope is to encourage infill here. The planning board thought this was an appropriate place. They have the purpose is for residential development, multi-unit development, and non-residential development, which is the commercial retail piece of a mixed-use building. The right-of-way is about 100 feet here, and then the proposed setbacks of over 20 feet on either side of the road allow taller buildings without having a canyon-like effect. And so right now, most of the right-of-way is where the Swiftway is on the east side of the road. And then there's this parallel access drive on the west side that parallels University Drive. The goal is to have that become a pedestrian pathway, and so a wide setback would allow that to happen. 75% of the ground floor facing University Drive and Northampton Road needs to be non-residential space. And so the planning board made a decision here to define mixed use differently elsewhere in the bylaw, but to really have a streetscape that has shops and other spaces, to have a vibrant streetscape. There's a 6th floor that's allowed. It must be stepped back from the facade. There's flexible parking, so we're not requiring any necessarily, a 2-to-1 or 1-to-1 parking ratio, but an applicant must provide a parking memo and study to show the permit granting authority that there's adequate on-site parking or shared parking. And, I'll say that the planning board, they discussed this a lot. So there are different iterations and versions discussed, would it be only students? And this is not what it is. It's actually, mixed use. So inclusionary zoning would apply. It can be a mix of unit types for different tenants. And, they really want to have this be a denser area. So some of this, the thinking here is it's multimodal. It's near Route 9. It's near the university. There's bus routes here. And if there's density here, then maybe there can be more bus routes. There could be bike share stations. And they really see this as a great opportunity to encourage some infill and some new development here. I will say at the same time, they're looking at other areas of town to do other things, right? So this is kind of one part of to me, a bigger strategy to address housing. And so they see this as a great opportunity to address housing and economic development with this overlay. As part of being a mixed use in an area where they think it's appropriate, in the memo it was noted that Mass General Law changed a few years ago. And so, if this were referred to the planning board and CRC, the planning board and CRC will need to make a finding that this is an eligible location. And if they do that, it's a defined term in Mass General Law then it only needs a majority vote to be adopted as a zoning measure. And a community cannot combine proposed zoning amendments that would have something that needs to be by majority, then with something that needs to be by a 2/3 majority. We're not proposing that here, but for other zoning amendments, if it's an area where the town would like to see either housing or mixed use or certain elements moving forward, we'll have to be careful in terms of how we structure any parts of the amendment, because if something needs a 2/3 vote, then it has to be two separate amendments. Here, as an overlay that only applies to mixed-use buildings with flexible dimensional standards and parking standards, we feel it does meet this definition. And the planning board is actually really excited by this, not the simple majority, but by the idea of this overlay. Like I said, after a number of months, many board members thought it was ready to move this forward. There's concerns about wetlands, but the town has a strong wetlands bylaw and conservation commission. We have a stormwater bylaw, so all those need to be followed. Any work in the right of way still needs to go through the regular processes. So really, this is addressing mixed use buildings on private property, and any other bylaw in town or regulation still needs to be followed.
Okay, the floor is, Chris, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, there's nothing else that I need to add. Thank you.
Okay. The floor is open for questions. Andy?
Yeah, I think that they just answered my question, said I'll confirm it. And that is that struck me that there were multiple things going on here, and the one that I'm conscious of these days is right of way. And you were mentioning the access road that is on the west side. And I've never been quite certain as to whether that's part of the right of way or if that is actually a road on the private property. But there's a whole set of questions that come up there too. But it seems that they're not part of the overlay discussion, but heavily related to it.
Right, so that Western Drive is on private property. It's right outside the right of way. And there's easements, a number of properties have easements to access that. And so, there's been previous town meeting action limiting the number of curb cuts on this section of University Drive. I think the thought was at one point this would become more of a one-way or a major entrance into UMass and to limit traffic. And I think at this point that could be revisited with this overlay. So, 70 University Drive and other developments have come before to ask for a new curb cut, and something that we would need to work with Public Works on. What is the right spacing and what's appropriate, especially if that access drive is no longer being used for vehicular, a parallel road.
Yeah, I mean, just a quick follow-up. Strikes me that this is actually a significant issue because I was on town meeting when we had the discussion about limiting the number of curb cuts going into University Drive. If we start eliminating that interior access road, things like access to the post office and to the slow body building becomes an issue. And I'm not sure then when you start dealing with those kinds of things, where in the scheme of things that falls, but it's something that obviously has to be addressed. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Kathy?
Nate, you may have already gone over this, but I was staring at the map. When I get down to Northampton Road and the little funny bottom part is where the big Y is, there's a post office, there's a CVS. Does this overlay that turns it into mixed use also include them? And the reason I'm asking is that is heavily used as a shopping market. When you go in there by the kids who live in all those dorms, they can walk easily to it. And although we might need housing, we also need to eat. And so when you go in there, it's a really busy market with a lot of kids. The CVS, we have a CVS in the middle of town. That's also heavily used. Then there's an office building and the post office. So the lines look like it takes in the whole thing and turns it into mixed use with residential. And so I think there's a risk that it develops out some of the commercial that's a major asset to the town.
Yeah, so includes those properties. I mean, we actually would say that, you know, perhaps the front parking lot of Big Y could be redeveloped. I mean, if there's actually more residents living down there, I think Big Y would stay because now they have, you know, hundreds of more people that can walk there and access there. And so, you know, doing this overlay doesn't necessarily mean that that will change. We're just, there's already 2 overlays down here in base zoning. And so what we're trying to do is offer an opportunity for something to happen. You know, it might be slow. It might, you know, there may be 4 projects that come of this, but it's really an opportunity. And so we actually think that some of those existing stores will become more valuable to prospective residents and tenants if this is built out. So the idea is not to lose Big Y or those commercial areas, but to actually, you know, get more people using them.
You know, I just want to, I understand you might hope there's more people using them, but supermarkets are a low margin business. And if someone sees an opportunity to build a large residential building and the rate of return is higher on it, that might overcome the low margin business. That's the thing I would worry about, because that combination is a nice combination of a marketplace where we've already lost it downtown. You saw Louis leave downtown, even though you built all those stores. Now we have a CVS selling food, a little bit of food anyway. So I just worry about, and I understand that it's an odd thing if you don't go all the way down. I have no problem with the upper part of it, thinking of it. Then the other question, I know this came up with the planning board, is that land is really, really wet. So unless you build up, you can't build very deep. And so it's got a high water table. It's sluggy back there once you get back very far. So just thinking of, you know, the limits to what can be built in terms of a physical structure on the land, it has to go up. Big Y being an exception, it's already in a different part, but that north part it's got a river almost running behind it. Well, it does have a river. Thanks.
Okay. Bob Hagner?
Yeah, I have I agree with Kathy's concern about Big Y, and we need to preserve that as a shopping center. But I also have a concern that if all we do here is provide dorms for students, then the mixed use, the commercial that we're going to get there is going to be focused on providing services to students, not necessarily to the community at large. Whereas if we had a broader spectrum of you know, families and senior housing there, there might actually be more development of commercial business that serves a broader community. So I don't want to see this just turn into, you know, more dorms for UMass and, you know, commercial properties to support them. The other thing I'm concerned about is parking. You know, if in fact we get the kind of commercial development that I would like to see, it might attract people that don't live in that area, so they would need parking in order to get into that commercial, you know, space. And again, I don't know what the requirements will be for parking, except, you know, the developers need to provide a plan, but that doesn't seem to really guarantee that there's going to be parking for all of the commercial space that's needed. So anyway, I think this can be dealt with in CRC, but I do have some concerns. I don't have a concern about developing this area, but I do have concern if it turns into just college dorms.
Councillor Haneke?
A couple of questions. I know, Nate, you've heard some of these from me before. I'm concerned that there's not a provision for apartments to go in this overlay. that it's only for mixed-use buildings, especially since the office park designation on the underlying zoning does not allow apartments at all. And office park also does not allow, I don't think, mixed-use buildings either. They're both no's in the office park. So that section of town, that portion of this overlay, we're at least adding mixed-use buildings only for the overlay. You have to follow the overlay, but we're not adding apartments to a place that we have specifically said we want more housing. I'd like to think of other ways of adding to this overlay the potential for apartment buildings. I know the last time CRC a couple years ago looked at apartments and changing the definition, particularly for the downtown, we were stuck because the definition of apartment needed tailored to different parts of town. And this seems like an overlay that is already being proposed seems like a perfect time to tailor a definition of apartments to this particular area. And I know there's concern about commercial space and losing commercial space, but we also have some studies that show we are actually saturated in commercial space. And we know people are having problems filling their commercial spaces in our town. The requirement of 75% of street-facing facade for non-residential use, again, goes to my concern about no apartments. It seems like there might be a better way to do this. And I'd like you to think about that and when we start holding hearings, be able to talk about the ability to maybe define a building as having a first floor that is commercial 1A space, I think it might be called. I'm not sure of my commercial building definitions, but a definition where the first floor is built to commercial standards, but might not need to occupy as commercial space, so that it actually can be functional as both commercial or residential, depending on the need at the time, and float maybe between them, depending on how things go. The maximum 65-foot, 6 floors, I love the six floors. Is 65 feet enough? When you've putting commercial at a minimum on the first floor, that's more than 10 feet tall. That's 15 or maybe 20 feet ceilings, and then you can't get, I don't know what people would do, but can you get a full 6 floors in with 65 feet? Or especially since this says no provision to waive dimensional standards. So I'm very concerned with the ability to get 6 floors in with the maximum height listed. I wouldn't want us to put a maximum height in that says you get 6 floors, but you can't actually get 6 floors with it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, can you build 6 floors when the first floor is commercial with a maximum of 65 feet? Those are at least now some of my questions. I'm going to be exploring expanding the overlay zone to a little larger. Some of the original proposals that the planning department had for the overlay were a little larger, and I will be exploring that in hearing.
And you're on CRC, correct? Yeah, okay. Jennifer?
Yes. Well, I think it's very important that it remain mixed use, all the buildings, that be a requirement. And actually, I hope that some of, Pat and I have just, Pat, I agreed with the comment she once made that we need more sort of, I think you used the adjective funky boutiques and businesses in Amherst, and Hampshire Bike Exchange, I go to all the time, is on University Drive. I'd hate to see businesses like that not be able to survive. And I think in exchange, what I'd like us to discuss in CRC, in exchange for the 6th floor, maybe some of the commercial space will have to be a loss leader, and you will not be able to charge top dollar or maybe market rate for every commercial space, so that we can keep some of our small, quirky, but businesses that people, and like a Hampshire Bike Exchange, which people depend on and provides a service that is much used in town and at that location. So I agree with everything that Bob Hegner said, and I'm very concerned. The Big Y parking lot, I go there all the time. It is usually quite full. If any of that space, if people are tempted to purchase it and put residential buildings and the parking is lost, that would impact, that'd be a real loss for the community. And I know people come in from some of the surrounding towns to Big Y at that location. So that we really can't sacrifice the parking that serves CVS. Big Y, there's a couple of restaurants there. I mean, there's some small businesses there that the community uses and relies on. And again, I would hate to see that in exchange for this overlay, we lose those businesses. I think that we're biting off a big chunk, and I don't think we need to extend the overlay to the north or the south. I think we can start with what we have and see, how we fill the space. And I am concerned about the very tight time frame as a member of CRC. This is a big project, and I don't. Often things are referred to us, and we're asked to report back in 60 or 90 days, but this sounds like it's pretty firm that we're supposed to have completed our work in a very tight time frame that we've never had that imposed before. That
No,
I'm
this
aware
is
of.
consistent with all of the other.
Oh, but it usually says that we can report back. We don't have, is that still the case?
Mandy Jo, please.
As a former chair of CRC, there are state law timelines.
Yeah.
The state law requires that both the planning board and CRC open their hearings within 65 days. The state law does, let me finish. The state law does not require either body to close their hearing within 65 days, but they need to be opened. So that is why the first bullet point says within 65 days, hold the hearing, because you must start that hearing within 65 days. State law also requires the town council vote on if they're going to vote, they must vote on the measure within 90 days of the hearing, the council's hearing closing. CRC holds the council's hearing. You must vote within 90 days of that hearing closing, or you have to hold another hearing. So you'd have to renotice it and redo all of that. So that's why that's in there. And so those other interim timelines, the state law also requires the planning board. Well, the state law requirement for planning board's report is the council cannot vote less than 21 days after the planning board closes its hearing unless the planning board has sent its report to the council. They have 21 days to send its report. If they don't send their report within 21 days to the council could actually vote without the planning board report.
Can I see the motion again?
Yeah,
Sure.
let's put the motion up again.
Sure, I just wanted to share, if I may,
Yes.
this document. It's a CRC document, so it's on the CRC webpage. There's a link. It describes the flow chart for zoning bylaw amendments and the notice periods and so on. One of the reasons that we want to avoid having multiple notice periods is because they're so costly. Those new. I can check.
It's a newspaper ad.
It's a
Which is
newspaper ad,
why
which-
it's so costly.
And we, unless CRC combines its hearings with the planning board, there are two separate notice periods in the newspaper, so those can get costly to repeat. I'll put the motion back up. And as Mandy said, this motion was intended to just encapsulate what the requirements of the state law are. And the deadlines that you see here, no later than 21 days of the close of the planning board public hearing and the close of the CRC public hearing. So there are various clocks that start and stop depending on the days of the public hearings. So a public hearing may begin and then not be closed for several weeks. So what seems like a very tight timeline may not be. So this 90-day deadline for the council action is actually at the close of the CRC public hearing. So CRC might have a public hearing that goes on for several weeks, and then that 90-day deadline doesn't begin until the CRC votes to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. It's been, I don't think we've had one of these in this term. We had one last term. That we had to go through this cycle. And it does seem tight until you realize it depends on when you close your hearing. So, I just want to go back to the big Y issue. It is the only large grocery store we have in Amherst. And I mean, I realize there are two others down the road in Hadley, but it's the only one in Amherst. It is one that was discussed when we agreed and voted on 132 Northampton Road. It is one that many, many people use. And so I don't know how the zoning will impact that, but I think the last thing we want to do is discourage a very, very seriously used business that provides food into some kind of difficulty that they wouldn't be able to be there. The other question I have is, I know that there is at least one project that's already in the works that's in this zone. Would that project continue to go forward if this is approved or if this is not approved?
Right, so 422 Amity Street, received a variance from the zoning board, and they opened their public hearing with the planning board already. And so they're moving forward with their site plan review. If this overlay were to be adopted, they would probably seek an amendment to the site plan review to comply with the overlay, meaning they could add a 6th floor, I think it's 27 units to what, compared to what they already have now. And some other changes, they'd have to step the building back a little bit to meet the setbacks and have a wider sidewalk, but it's something that the applicant had stated that they're looking into, just, to make it work. So they were following the overlay process. So the design of the building, much of what they're doing in terms of mixed use requirements, all of that's already met. So there would be changes, but they're going to go forward with what they've already proposed. And if this were to then come into place later, they would just probably seek to use it. But they're moving forward with what they have already.
Are there any other projects in the works at this point for this area?
No.
That we know of? Okay, thank you. Pat?
Thank you for speaking out about the big Y. I mean, Amherst is a food desert. And I am concerned if we jeopardize that store. There is Whole Foods, or whatever it's called now, was Bread and Circus when it started in Cambridge. And that's a very expensive store. Many of the people that I know can't access it because of cost. But the other thing is, there was recently, in the last 4 months or so, an article about Stop and Shop and possible closures of Stop and Shop stores in different parts of the state. And there was no listing that said where. So I guess I've gotten a little bit more comfortable, Nate, with the overlay idea. I want to say that to you. But I am concerned that we could jeopardize Big Y because some developer could make more money by doing something larger. So if you address that, can you wait just 1 minute? The other thing is, it becomes very important that these not be dorms for undergraduate students. And I don't know whether we can guarantee that. If it's a mixed use building and the units are varied size, does that guarantee that we will have families living there, seniors living there? I do know that in any building that rents to students that aren't these public-private dorm things, they're renting also to graduate students and to young faculty. And that was something I had to hear from somebody who works for a developer, someone I trust who works for a developer. So it made me realize, wait a minute, when I think student, I'm only thinking of undergraduates. So I don't know if I have a question here, but is there a way to guarantee no dorms? And is there a way to protect Stop and Shop, Big Y?
Yeah, I think I don't have a great answer for either of those. I actually, like I said earlier, I think Big Y would see this as an opportunity to, increase business. And so, yeah, but that's something we could investigate more. In terms of the students, the planning board, we had talked about making this student only, right? So right now, this is a mixed use building, so social dormitories or dormitories are not allowed. And so it can't be, you know, we do allow social dormitories elsewhere in town. And so that's not what we had. And so that was discussed at the planning board. Would it actually be students only, right? And actually do something that is different than, market rate with affordable units. There will be inclusionary units acquired here. So there will be, affordable units and market rate units. And so it could be any prospective tenant, right? I mean, the market is the market, and so it's really hard to control who the end user is. But the hope is that by, having inclusionary zoning, by allowing a number of units, that there will be a mix of tenants and residents. You know, the planning board wanted that, and so I at one point was pushing for only students, right? What if we just said let's actually have students here? It's so close to the university, and they said no. We want to have commercial development. We want to have different household types, and so that's where they went with the mixed use buildings. It's hard to guarantee that it won't be students, but I've heard too that other buildings, it's not all undergraduates. It's a mix, right? Maybe it's 60-40, whatever it is, but at least with inclusionary zoning, we have a percentage that will be affordable and deed restricted, and then there's probably another proportion that will be could be graduate students or other end users.
Can I follow up?
Please, go ahead, Pam.
When you presented this earlier to CRC, I believe, I lost my train of thought. You mentioned that and you kind of brought it up again, that, oh, well, Big and Y would like this idea, it'll bring customers, but you also said that it's possible that there could be development in front of it, which would impact parking for it and things like that. So I guess I would like some clarity. If a developer comes in that's going to make a whole lot more money, I'm not sure what the process is or how we would protect a grocery store. And how would we protect its parking? Because I go there and I don't live close enough to walk anymore, given my knees.
Yeah, I mean, I think that becomes a conversation with the town and the property owner and prospective developer. It's hard to have a guarantee that something couldn't change. So if we had, it's all one ownership. So, the whole Big Y property is all one ownership. And it also extends into Hadley. So the building actually is on the town line. The front portion is in Amherst and the back portion is in Hadley. And so, and the CVS is a separate property. So the back of that property is also in Hadley. So I think it's something that, it's a valid concern. I mean, I guess I'm being the optimist, thinking, wow, this becomes a great place to have a grocery store, knowing there'll be more customers. I guess I can see the flip side that, does this become so valuable that the grocery store isn't worth it? I guess I don't see it that way, but I think it's a good concern and something we can look into.
Thank you, Nate.
Councilor Lord.
Yes, thank you. I just want to ask a question to make sure I'm not doing a conflict of interest about whether I can vote this, even though it's a referral. But the organization I work for rents 4 properties within this overlay zone, and I'm on the leadership team. So I just wanted to clarify whether I should abstain from this vote. I don't think it's a conflict of interest, but I just would love some clarity about that. And I want to thank the counselors for bringing up the other points.
As long as you do, go ahead, Athena, if you want to.
Councilor Lord, for future votes, when it comes to making a final decision on the adoption of the zoning overlay, before then, I would check with the Ethics Commission. They can advise you on your specific situation. I don't see that there would be a conflict on a vote to refer. But in the future, before this comes back to the council, I would advise you to check with the Ethics Division. You can explain your whole situation. They can let you know if it's wiser to abstain or recuse or what have you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing it up, Councilor Lord. Councilor Haneke.
Yeah, in reading the overlay zoning, section 17, it appears that the only mixed use requirement is parking allowed. Well, there's 2. parking allowed on the first floor or ground floor, and 75% of the street-facing facade is non-residential. If I read this correctly, that means that none of the requirements within section 3.325 apply to section 17. If that is correct, that means there is no required diversity of bedroom count in the mixed-use buildings and the overlay as currently proposed. Is that accurate?
Nate?
Yes, so there's no requirement to have a very, right now they say no more than 50% should be the same bedroom size or bedroom count. And so we don't have that condition in there right now.
Okay. Were there any other questions, Counselor Haneke? Okay. Kathy?
When CRC gets this, I'd like to know whether we can carve the Big Y part out of the overlay. So have the overlay come down, but come short of it. So in addition to Big Y, just people who are there, there's Goodwill, and Goodwill is a really low margin, i.e. you should see it at any time of year when people are moving out. I mean, it is an amazing asset. So I just wanted to know whether we can carve it out. And Pat, in terms of, could we get a mix of people who are living there and mix of units? The one, when we first ran as council, Spring Street was going to be 2 and 3 bedrooms for families. And they said, the market students, their efficiencies now. So if you build very small units that hold one person, you're unlikely to get families in it. And once it's mixed use building, we don't have direct control on it. There's a little bit in apartment building that has a mix of size of units that no one, but in our mixed use building world, the developer can figure out what the best market is. So I don't think we have a real protection if we rezone it without some change in what we can't specify we want there. I don't know what the market will yield, but 5 floors of apartments and units might all be small. So my question is, could we stop I like the idea of developing some of this, but I want to keep some of the things that we think are assets. So in CRC, could we explore, can we just truncate the overlay zone, make it not as long, I guess I think north-south, truncate the south end.
Are there any
I'll
other?
say, there are other measures in terms of if it remains in the overlay, could you have a standard or condition related to, proximity to Northampton Road in terms of other uses? So there could be ways to keep the overlay and still, have, different uses or something that encourages Big Y to stay where it is. In terms of unit size, I think that's really up to the developer and what they would like to manage. So the current proposal at 422 Amity is a mix of studios all the way to 3 bedrooms. And so, that developer and property owner doesn't want to, I think likes the mix of units because it attracts different, residents. And so some developers may want, a similar size unit. And others may not, just because the way they want to manage it and who they want as their, on the property. And so it is really difficult to require a mix. Previously in different zoning we have, right? So, and the trends changed. So 10 years ago, the trend was 3 and 4 bedrooms, kind of suite style living in bigger units. And then now it's right, smaller singles and studios. It could go back again. And so in our zoning and older decisions, we've actually required a certain percentage of 3 or 4 bedroom units. And then we've heard from the property owner saying they have a really hard time filling those units, even if it's meant for families, just because they don't have the appropriate size, or, they might have some, if they move out, it takes a while to fill. And so the planning board did discuss having, some provisions there, but decided on having flexibility at this point, as opposed to having a prescriptive formula or proportionality to unit sizes.
Counselor Haneke.
I think you just addressed this, but you answered my question that says, Right now, our zoning bylaw on page 31 requires any mixed-use building to have no more than 50% of total number of dwelling units having the same bedroom count. And I think you just said that in developing this overlay, the planning board actually considered that and rejected having that same requirement for this overlay, such that they believed that it would be okay if a mixed-use building was built with all, say, 4-bedroom units or all 1-bedroom units.
Nate?
Right, yeah, so they, what we actually have seen with that 50%, sometimes depending on even if it's a larger building, what that actually does is it ends up, splitting the units a little differently because you can't be at 50% evenly, and it will change the ratio. And so the planning board here said, well, let's let the developer come with a proposal. And so they didn't want to have that requirement in terms of, certain unit sizes.
Jennifer?
I know for one development where they wanted mostly 4 bedrooms, and the 4-bedroom, they told the zoning board of appeals that the rent would probably be $4,500. And there was a request that they not all be 4 bedrooms because at that price, they could only be rented to students sharing the rent. So I guess there's 2 sides.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. I think for the purposes of this, we should put the motion back up on the screen. The motion has been made and seconded. It is very detailed in terms of what needs to happen and provides some timelines. And it certainly is a significant piece of work ahead for CRC and the planning board. Okay. So the motion's been made and seconded. We'll move to a vote. Yes, I'm sorry. Question?
The first bullet states that CRC and the planning board public hearings must be held no later than November 27. The 65 days, I believe, is the state law for planning board when it is referred. There is nothing that says the Community Resources Committee has to have it within the 65 days of referral. Is that true?
It's the town council's public hearing on the zoning bylaw. CRC is holding a public hearing on behalf of the town council, so that requirement is for the council's hearing.
When
Mandy Jo.
I was chair, I asked for a legal ruling on that matter because I think I read the law as you are, which is the planning board needed to start in 65 days, and the only deadline for the council was the vote after it closed. The legal ruling that came back was that both had to start within 65 days.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, this is a referral to CRC with timelines attached. We'll start with Counselor Lord.
Aye.
Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Counselor Ryan is absent. Kathy Shane.
I guess yes.
Andy Steinberg.
Yes.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Pat DeAngelis.
Aye.
Anna Devlin Gothier.
Aye.
Counselor Ette.
Aye.
Lynn Griesmer is an aye. Counselor Haneke.
Aye.
Bob Hegner.
Yes.
Unanimous with one counselor absent. We have finished the action items. So we can take this down. And I'm going to suggest we not do goals tonight. That we not do anything with goals tonight. Because as I look at the agenda for October 7th, it actually will have significant enough room to do them all at that time. But I do ask that you spend some time looking at them so that we can just quickly go through them. I think it is important to have this discussion because GOL has to start their discussion of town manager goals. so that they can bring it to the council before the end of the year. Okay. So appointments we've already done. We're on to committee and liaison reports. CRC, Pam Rooney.
Thank you. CRC has been discussing the solar bylaw with input from at least one counselor, and there was general agreement that CRC will not pursue a separate battery energy storage system bylaw at this time, but some reference of battery energy storage systems could go into and be incorporated into aspects of the solar bylaw itself. We will discuss at the upcoming meeting our process for public comment and our approach and strategy. So I'm excited to think about that. Yes.
Anything else? Thank you. Elementary School Building Committee, Kathy.
I think you all got the news, as well as the town got the news that we got on Friday, that the bidding process produced a low bidder that in total, between coming in low on the early site package as well as this, produces a $4.8 million lower than budget. And I just want everyone to know, and I think this was in the memo that Paul sent, we already had a $5 million contingency. So we have nearly $10 million in contingency on this project compared to, and this is all the original number that people saw. So we've had, I think this is a result of a fabulous design team, including all the elements that created such a detailed architectural drawings that there were very few questions, and the bids came in very close together, which is also an indication that people were reading it the same way. And the attention to detail, I expect, will continue, because one of the many features of this design team, when we were picking them, I took a tour of a building that they had recently built in Springfield, and the civil engineer in charge of all the projects said he'd never seen drawings that were as precise as they were. There were no change orders, that he couldn't believe how well the architects had done it. And we had this same architect on our building that was in charge of that building. So it just built us our confidence even when we chose the team. So it's basically a green light, and the whole thing can start in October. There's a flat piece of land they can build on, and they just have to spread the pile of dirt. Instead of having it be a pile, it's for the underneath of the building to raise the building. So it's extraordinarily exciting to have it move forward at this rate.
I have a question. Has the pile of dirt resulted in compressing down?
You know, I assume they will be testing that. What we were told is the compacting of the dirt on top of that is the same weight as the building. Now, how you measure the weight of a pile of dirt. So the idea is that the building weight won't push it down any further. So now when you spread it and you build on top of it, so I think people remember because of the site and the water levels, we're building up so there can be drainage off. So I think the answer is yes.
Okay. I go, whenever I drive by, I see this pile of dirt and wonder if it's compounding. Fine, any questions so far? Finance Committee? Bob Hager.
Nothing to report. I was on vacation last week, so we canceled the meeting. Where our next meeting is October 1st.
Okay, thank you. GOL, Anna?
GOL will be meeting on Thursday, the 26th, to discuss the committee charge for the African Heritage Reparation Assembly successor body. And so if folks based on, I know we didn't discuss it at the council level, but if folks have questions or things that they'd like to see in the charge, please email those to me as soon as possible. And hopefully we've got a short meeting because it's a special one, but other than that, that's what we've got going on.
Okay. Jones Library Building Committee, Pam Rooney.
Thank you. Yes, the Jones Library Building Committee met on the 17th. It was announced that there were 4 approved general contractors. So those are the 4 that would be expected to bid on this project. There are several questions asked. And the first one was, might the required Section 106 timeline affect the bid date? Another question is, if there are any mitigation measures to protecting historic features, should they not be incorporated into those bid docs? And a concern was raised that otherwise the project is subject to change orders, which we just heard from Kathy is really critical. You do not want change orders on your project because you cannot control what the contractor will essentially charge. They will propose a cost for a change order, but it's really hard to keep them tight. And so you start to lose control of your budget. So if you do not incorporate your mitigation measures, how do you protect your budget? And then another question was, who would pay for changes to the construction documents to accommodate any mitigation measures before or after the bid has occurred? And unfortunately, there were no answers to those questions because neither the town manager nor the project manager, the owner's project manager, was able to be present at that meeting.
Okay. Are there questions at this time? Kathy?
Yes, my question is, hearing Pam's report, and I had heard some of what had happened in the meeting, is I have a major concern of moving forward without first getting approval from the Section 106 review for historic and environmental. It's fairly critical because if there were negative impacts that required mediation, both the NEH and the HUD grants rules require this happen before contracting. So we're at risk if there were any negative findings of putting $2 million at risk. The concept that we also had there was an email that was received from a FOIA request from NEH saying if the process wasn't done correctly, the town, not NEH, would be liable if it wasn't done correctly. So it's important, and I believe we are going through all the steps. So I think it's premature to go out to bid before completing the review process. Or if we go out to bid, set the due dates for the end of the expected 1-month review. So the bidders need to know that this process is pending. So I really urge the town manager to think of the timing of all of this, because we don't want to lose these grants, and we certainly don't want to face any legal challenges. And as Pam just said, you can't, if you think about it, you can't contract before you know that 106 has been clear sailing, and you can't do a change order until you have a contract. So you really can't count on change orders later because you'd have to contract first. So we really need to wait and do the timing carefully. So Paul, I don't know to what extent you have the power to really think through the timing on all of this, but this process seems to be pretty complex, and it's important that we put it to rest. Certainly, we have to put it to rest before we sign a contract. So I'll leave it at that. This wasn't listed as an action, but I really hope the council joins me in urging the town manager to be really careful on the timeline here and not to contract before the process is over.
Paul, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so these are really good questions, so I appreciate that. The It's a very complex timeline, and we're trying to abide by all the requirements. The goal has been to go out to bid this fall because there are a number of things coming into play. One is last time we went out to bid in the spring, and the critique was that was a bad time of year to go out. So we've identified that this is a good time. We also have our pre-qualified contractors, much like, and we're sensing that the market is strong given what happened with the elementary school building project. We also have the MBLC funds, which are supposed to be committed by the end of December, and we're overlaying all these different timelines. One of the things that we've done is to go out to bid, but have a 60-day response period that whoever puts in the bid has to hold that bid date for 2 months. And so that will allow us to hopefully, given the time frame for the 106 review, complete the 106 review. This is all about the money from the federal government. That's why the 106 review is triggered. And that's on the library side of the ledger in terms of the town side and the MBLC side and all that. That the 106 review is not required for that. But we want to get those funds. Those funds are committed. Those are important funds. So I think, I've been, the owners, our Bob Parent has been working very hard on this to sort of line up everything to see if it will go forward. The decision to actually award the bid, will probably not happen until January because we want to make sure everything is in place before we move forward. And that means there will be litigation most likely on something along the lines here. There's been enough, anticipation of this and a lot of opposition. So I think we're also thinking about that as well.
So, Paul, did I hear you correctly saying 60 days to respond? Because that leaves a
No.
big chunk.
No, I'm sorry, 60 days. Once they submit a bid, they have to hold the bid for 60 days. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. So once they give us a price, normally you say you'll hold that price for 30 days. In the bid specs, I believe we're putting in 60 days to hold the bid price.
Okay, Jennifer?
Okay, so let me see if I'm understanding this. If the bids go out, and at this point, are they scheduled to go out this week?
I think they're supposed to go out by the end of September. Yes.
Okay, so the bids go out, and then the Project 106, the Section 106 review proceeds. And if there has to be changes to the bid, to the RFP, then that will be made after the RFP is issued?
Yeah, because, we can wait until the 106 review completes its process, then we're into next year. And I think that goes up against our major funder, which is the MBLC. They want us to commit the funds sooner than that. So we're just making a decision here that we will be working through the 106 review simultaneously as we're reviewing the bids.
So the RFP may have to be changed. I mean, wouldn't it be easier to ask the MBLC for, another extension? They seem very
That might need to happen as well.
Are there any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to move on to TSO. Andy?
Yes, as you know, thanks to tonight's meeting, we have a lot on our schedule. However, I anticipated that, and I sent an agenda to Athena this morning for posting and for Thursday's meeting. But I want to actually go over it with you because it sort of does constitute what the report is. The first substantive item is the proposed waste hauler program and bylaw amendments. We said in our most recent report that one of the things we're going to do at our next meeting is to review the waste hauler work plan, and which was submitted it was in the packet for the last meeting when we voted on this. The other thing that we want to talk about a little bit more is outreach. And I'm mentioning outreach because there was something in the report about urging district meetings because they were very they're a very useful part of an outreach process. District 1 had a meeting on Sunday, and it was a very good discussion. I really appreciated hearing all of the questions and made a record of them so that we can take them up and continue to explore them and report back and really show the people who raised the questions that we were listening and that we're actually think I know some of the responses. We have a District 2 meeting already scheduled. So it is now new in that we're at the point where we've taken a significant step to the council. So I hope that happens. This next agenda item is something that we also reported on, which is the proposed Transportation and Parking Commission charge and amendments to the town council policy on control and regulation of public ways. And there was an initial report, which you can see in the last written report that was for today's meeting. One of the things that we were requesting of all of you as counselors is that if you have questions that you would like us to be looking into regarding that, take a look at the list that is in our report. And if there are issues that you think are important that are not in that list, it would be helpful to get them sooner rather than later. Obviously, if we had them on Thursday, we could talk, at least acknowledge them, but I'm not viewing that as a deadline. So don't feel that I'm saying Thursday's a deadline. And after that, we won't consider questions, but I would urge you not to wait too long on thinking through what questions that you would want to make sure that we explore. The other two items, of course, are the intersection improvements on Southeast Street between Main and College Street. And we talked about, that was just a referral tonight in the University of Massachusetts signs. I'll go over my notes and notes of other members of the committee, as well as Athena's notes from tonight. And hopefully we'll have a complete list of the questions that were posed. But if there are additional questions, is similar to what I said for the Transportation and Parking Commission, it's really better that we get them to consider as opposed to having them come in later. And then the other thing that we're going to have to be talking about is future meeting schedule and agendas. Sounds like a boring routine topic, but given the size of the things that are before us, as well as other business that we routinely have before the committee, I think it's going to be a real challenge to develop a meeting plan that tries to fit all of this together. So that is the agenda item. So I think that our meeting on Thursday is going to be a challenging one for the committee, but that's what our plan is. And it's at 10 o'clock by Zoom.
Can I just add very quickly, with regard to waste hauler, for the District 1 meeting and the District 2 meeting, we basically took the presentation that was done here and adapted it slightly. And so that's available if you're going to have a district meeting. And both Kathy and I worked on those. The second thing is, Andy, if you would like feedback on the transportation and parking stuff, if you send me what you want feedback on, I will send it out as a general email. Other than that, I have no other questions. Do people have questions for TSO? Okay. Liaison reports. Any liaison reports? Okay. We've done the minutes. Paul, I'm sorry, Jennifer.
A couple of questions. I don't know if you were going to take questions at the end. They're related to the library.
Oh,
I assume at the town manager's report
giving-
and or at the.
Oh, I didn't see it. Manager report. Okay.
Okay. Either there or when we talk about future agenda items, et cetera. Okay. Town manager's report. Paul, anything? I know it's no written report this time. But
There's no written report, but I do have some things to update you. You'll have a written report at your next meeting. First, just, the school building bid is really important, and that's really great news. And I do want to commend Kathy for her leadership throughout the process. It's just been really spectacular, and getting into the details of this. So that's been really terrific. Also, we had the topping off ceremony of the Centennial Water Treatment Facility, which is topping off means that you've gotten as high as you're going to get in a building. We didn't do a groundbreaking ceremony because it was just a mess up there, and there's no place to really stand because it's all mud. So this sort of symbolizes that we're halfway through the project. Thanks to Councilor Haneke for speaking, and for Councilor Griesmer for being there, and Rep. Dom for speaking as well. It's a $21 million project, 1.9% loan from the State Safe Water Drinking Act revolving fund, and that has come with it a $6 million principal relief. So that's a project that's going forward. And as we talked about at the topping off ceremony, this is going to provide a safe source of clean water, drinking water for the decades going forward. So it's really a forward-looking project that also provides resilience because it is a different source of water. So it adds another source of water to our community. So really important. And it's being paid. People say, well, how is this being paid? It's being paid by, beyond the grants that we're getting, by the water users. And that the biggest water users in the town of Amherst are University of Massachusetts and Amherst College. So everybody who uses water is contributing to building this plant. The third thing I want to mention was our assistant town clerk, Amber Martin, has been earned the certified municipal clerk from the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. She's town clerk Sue Audette already has that award, but we just got notified of that today. And that's a real important thing as a professional credential for Amber to earn. So congrats to Amber for that. The Charter Review Committee, which Athena is staffing, they've had their first meeting, and their next meeting is October 10th at 6 p.m. Lastly, well, first, we also recognizing Chris Brestrup's, her farewell ceremony is going to be Thursday. So if you're welcome to come, there'll be more things said about her legacy that she's left for the town. It's just a remarkable career, and just really honored to have been able to work with her. And then the block party. I know many of you were at the block party. It was probably the biggest. I mean, the weather was gorgeous, but wow, there were a lot of people there, and people are really happy and excited to be there, and it was really well done. Congrats to the bid, and also to Angela Mills and our entire town team who put together a really dramatically bigger showing for town staff to be interacting with the public. And the counselors had their own table, and we put the water jug on the counselors' table so people would find them, and it was well used. So are there specific questions on the library, Jennifer?
Let me just mention there were 10 counselors that at some point or another worked the council table. So I really want to thank them. It's a good show. Kathy.
So I just want to say a big thanks, Paul. I thought it was a terrific success, and the number of little kids out running around was so joyful with the acrobats in the middle of the thing. The other thing I want to just talk about, the extra duty that Paul performs for all of us. I couldn't have held the District 1 meeting without a key to the North Amherst store. And he walked into town Saturday morning, and here's the key, Paul. So I remember to give it back to I have to give it back to you. But it was like, help. There are going to be people on the stoop, and I can't get in. And Paul came through. So thank you for that.
Okay. Cameron.
Hi, I had a question about the Resident Oversight Board. I know CSWG identified a need for that some time ago. And I do understand that a follow-up survey and report were worked on last winter, and I just wonder when that report can be made available It's now 6 or 7 months since it was finished, I believe. So that, and what is the status at this point of the Resident Oversight Board? Thank you.
Sure. So the Resident Oversight Board has been, we went out to bid once and we went out a bit second time, and we've selected a consultant to help build the Resident Oversight Board. It's a pretty complex activity. Our team we've met with the bidders as we talked through the proposal. Our team met last Thursday. We're meeting with the successful bidders on Wednesday, I believe, to sort of finalize the details. And then we'll execute a contract and they can get started on the kind of work that they need to do. There's a lot of work in terms of decisions to be made on what the Resident Oversight Board will look like, who will serve on it, what things are they going to be able to do, what will their powers be. And so I think that will move forward. We have someone who's local and someone who's from Cambridge who has done resident oversight boards in the past. So we're pretty excited about the consulting team we have. The report, I think that was a report to CSS. I can check on the report. I have to talk with our DEI department.
Okay. There was a second report that was done. I think it was finished in February, but I don't think it's been made public yet.
Okay, everything's public, so I'll check on it.
So the second report from February's, we'll get a hold of that and make sure it's distributed. Okay. Jennifer?
Yes, at the end of the last council meeting, I think you said that you and Paul were meeting with a team from the library. Maybe it was the president, the trustees. And do we have any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
So let me just say, as I explained to you, so the first thing was to have it at Finance Committee meeting. So Finance Committee had a meeting and they reported about it. And then I consulted with Bob and Kathy, and I said, so if you include in your report what you discussed and the chart, does that suffice for you? And they said yes. So I didn't add it.
Question.
Okay.
At the end of that meeting, I asked if you could ask about the $900,000 that had been in public comment.
Why don't you lean into the mic
Okay,
and ask
in
your
public
question?
comment. So my question was, I thought you were going to, we were asked if we had any questions for you during that meeting, and I asked if you could inquire about, I think it's $900,000 that was going to be deposited in January, that during public comment at that last meeting, that question had been asked.
Right. Paul
So-
wasn't here last time. Right.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
So the trustees have turned over $1.6 million to date. And I'll just try to give a little framework, and I think we can have our finance director come in and help give you more. So the MBLC, so far, we've received $15.5 million in the MBLC grant. This is an unusual grant in that they give you the money up in front and ahead of time. So they've given us about $2.774 million. So far, so that's what we have in the bank, right? That's what we have in our account. So far, we've spent about $2.3 million. So we have on account, we have not touched the CPA money that's been allocated. We have not touched anything that the town has allocated, the $15.7 million. So we have about $1.6 million that the library trustees have turned over from their fundraising, and that's just sitting there. So there's no need for funds right now at this point in time. We want to make sure that they're following, that they're going to be able to raise their money. And they publish their sort of status report every month from the capital campaign. So that's, I'm confident that they have all these, commitments of funds. But before we move down into actual signing a contract, we're going to need real money on the barrelhead, basically.
So we're not, so we have just not required that be
Right.
submitted.
We're not spending the money on it. They've given us $500,000 for the value engineering. So that's on top of, that's actually coming out of the library side of the ledger as well. And that's the town has to pay the bills, and then we send the invoices over and they pay immediately so that's a zero cost item for the town.
Okay.
Was that the 900 you were referring to was really the 500 for the value engineering?
No.
Okay. All right.
That was,
Was on the spreadsheet you gave us, Lynn, when we were voting on this, on the expected flow of funds and when pieces would come in that Bob Pam worked you on.
Right.
That, you
Okay.
know, we'll get this much money by this date.
I think-
That's
I think-
where this number
I think Mr.
showed up.
Pam put that together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
then I just, for my own curiosity, since the timing with the section 106 review,
Yep.
how did the first RFP go out without that process being initiated?
You don't have to, you can go out to bid without the 106 review being done.
But the bids came back and it still hadn't been initiated. So
Right, we would, if we wanted it, so the bids are something that we can, the 106 review is tied to the federal funding. It's tied to that, and that's on, again, on the other side of the ledger from what the town is. And so until, you know, won't qualify for the $2 million basically, if we don't follow through with the 106 review. And that's a process that is been initiated. We've hired a consulting firm to help fund that, to manage that process, because it's a very collaborative and
I don't understand how I mean, I know it's water under the bridge.
there's nothing that prevents you from going out to bid. What they say is you can't contract, which we did not do, until you have it.
So if the bids had come in on budget,
And
we
we
would-
wanted those $2 million.
which we do, I mean, that was part of the
Right.
funds that were communicated to us when we
We would have had to do
granted
the 106
yeah,
review.
the borrowing. So how would that have happened?
I don't know. We would have had to figure that one out. I mean, and quite honestly, we have to see where the numbers come in on, you know, when the bids come due. You know, that's the threshold point. Are we going to be, where's the number going to come in for the library? And in many ways, you know, learning that number earlier than later is important to us.
So while we're on the discussion of the library, if the Mass Historical Commission, which my understanding is there was an iterative process of submitting stuff. And at this point, it doesn't look like they will approve us for historic tax credits, okay? If they had approved us, would we still have to do the 106?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Probably so, just because it's a HUD requirement.
Okay.
It's a HUD and a NEH, and it's bizarre, Lynn, but they both require it, and one delegated to the other to initiate it, but it's a separate review.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions of the town manager? Okay. In your packet was a written report. I want to thank many people for stepping up and being at various events, and Mandy Jo for speaking at the last minute at the Centennial Water Plant. And I do encourage you to go down to go up to North Station. I don't know if you just go to North Station when you have a free moment and look at the $6 million engine we just bought. It finally came in, and the fire EMS people there are in the process of training on it and equipping it, and eventually it will be housed at the central fire station. But it's pretty exciting to see a $6 million piece of equipment. And the others that are, they're delayed because it's just hard to get these pieces of equipment. There's still 2 ambulances coming and a ladder truck. Are there any questions for the town manager's report? Then we'll move on. Oh, I'm sorry, Pam.
I don't think this is for town manager, so I was going to wait for you or just to bring it up as a question at the end.
Okay, so future agenda items, let me just mention, on the next agenda, as we mentioned tonight, we'll finish up the goals. We will have the nuisance bylaw, the second reading and a vote. And I believe that we have already invited the building inspector and the chief of police. Is that correct? Okay, and they're confirmed? Okay. We will have the Amherst Black Reparations Committee charge, assuming that GOL finishes that. And so that's what I have on the agenda for October 7th. So now we're to councilor comments or any other agenda items. Pam.
Thank you. I appreciate that there is a lot of material that needs to come into the packets. And I would encourage anyone who has the material to be placed in the packet, get it to Athena as early as possible. I realized as I headed out of my house around noon on Friday that everything came in about 11 o'clock noonish on Friday, and I didn't, I can't complain, but I did not have a chance to look at it until this morning. So I really do appreciate having the time to think about and be prepared for my meetings. And I would just ask anyone who's preparing stuff to kindly put it in a little earlier. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Councillor Ette.
So I'd just like to thank the residents of District 1 that showed up for the meeting on Sunday, and also for the councillors who were able to make it, Andy, Lynn, and Jennifer. And also I'd like to thank the town for making sure we're able to host something that was decent, and it was a successful event. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we have no topics for the 48 hours. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Shane seconds.
Don't rush. Then we will move to a vote. And I believe at this point we start with Pam Rooney.
Yes.
Councillor Ryan's absent. Kathy Shane.
Yes.
Andy Steinberg.
Yes.
Jennifer Taub.
Yes.
Councillor Walker.
Yes.
Pat DeAngelis.
Aye.
Anna Devlin Gothier.
Aye.
Councillor Ette.
Aye.
Lynn Griesmer's an aye. Councillor Haneke.
Aye.
Bob Hegner.
Yes.
Councillor Ward.
Aye.
Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. It is unanimous and we are adjourned at 9:05. Thank you.